throughout the Northeast, particularly through the Philadelphia area region, because of uh, essentially very destructive weather that came through yesterday. So I know a lot of folks are drying out and hope you are keeping safe. Hope you are safe while you are doing that. In the meantime, at the top of the show, joining us now is the new president of the National Bar Association. The National Bar Association is the national organization representing black lawyers throughout the United States. There are about, I think it's about 50, 60,000 members, black attorneys who are represented by the National Bar Association. And we are talking with its new president, Tricia C.K. Hoffler. Tricia C.K. Hoffler, just sworn in recently as the new president. She joins us by phone here on Reality Check. Tricia, how are you doing? Good to talk with you.
I'm fine. Good morning. How are you?
All right. Good morning. Good morning. So, and congratulations to you. So I know that's, and I know you've been involved heavily with the National Bar Association for quite some time. So, so you're already hitting the ground running, I suspect.
I am. I did hit the ground running. I have been involved with the National Bar for, I want to say, decades, at least 2.5 decades. It's an organization I've always loved, but we are in the midst of 3 pandemics. So I had to hit the ground running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our mandate is significant right now at this time, this tumultuous time in our history. So I had no choice, and I'm taking up the charge.
National Bar Association, once again, if you want to get more information on it, go to nationalbar.org. It's been around for quite a long time. You're coming up on nearly 100 years in 2025. It's the nation's oldest, largest national network of black attorneys and judges as well. So you mentioned pandemic. Talk about the issues, the topics that are front and center for you. What's on your agenda this new year as NBA president?
Absolutely. There's 3 pandemics that are on my agenda during my year. COVID-19 is the first one. Election suppression is the second one. And the third one is police brutality. And I call them pandemics, and there are 3 pandemics that are intertwined. COVID is affecting how we live and how we do business. But election suppression has been going on for a long time. It's just accentuated. It's even worse now because of COVID, because of the ramifications, because of the fact that people are having to stand in line, opting to vote, if we look at the latest primaries, in person because they didn't receive their absentee ballot. They didn't receive their ballots in the mail. So they had to vote and stand in line because they refused to be denied the right to vote. So the election suppression during COVID is just really something because some people are feeling they're having to make a choice between living or catching this deadly disease and voting, which is what it really shouldn't be.
Right.
So COVID, the 2 of them are intertwined, and then police brutality. Well, I've never known a day, a minute, a second of my life, and I speak for so many, when there hasn't been police brutality in our community. So right now, because of this movement, and we embrace this movement because it's wonderful that people, mainstream America, realizes and has awakened to understand that Black lives do matter. We, of course, have always known that Black lives matter. And so when we look at police brutality, every single one of the high-profile cases that we see, those cases, those families are being represented by National Bar Association lawyers. Chris Stewart is a very, very active National Bar Association lawyer. He's a past president of one of our affiliate chapters in Atlanta, Georgia, the Gate City Bar. Ben Crump, a past president of the National Bar Association. Darrell Parks, a past president of the National Bar Association. Lee Barrett, a very active member of the National Bar Association. Juanita Baker, who's representing the family of Breonna Taylor, is a current vice president of the National Bar Association. And I could go on and on and on. The bottom line is the National Bar members and our organization have always been leaders in this. We are just taking it to the next level because we are in the midst of 3 pandemics. We are not going to sit around. We can't sit around. We don't have the luxury of sitting around and not taking leadership and moving the bar, the National Bar, and the agenda on these issues because they are plaguing our community. They're plaguing our membership, and so that's why we're very, very aggressive in our efforts.
You have in National Bar Association presidents, they're selected every year, and so it's like, what is 1-year terms, 2-year terms? Is that correct?
Yes, we have a 1-year term. You serve as president, but you served the previous year as president-elect. So when I was president-elect, I worked on preparing for my year because you got to hit the ground running. But also, I had the benefit of chairing our election protection effort. And the reason why that was important was because we have an election in November. We have the election, so we were able to put in place and to emphasize the coalition groups that we have working in the field, because the one thing that we know about lawyers, we do have the ability to go into a courtroom and institute litigation and speak truth to power in a way that perhaps other groups don't have the ability to do, simply because of our training and our license.
We know 2020 is a special year. We know it's very unique. It's unprecedented in a lot of ways. But from year to year, you're having a new president from year to year. So what's going to make your presidency of the NBA different from previous presidents? Like what differentiates the way you're going to manage the National Bar Association, the way you're going to lead it and coordinate these projects and these agenda items in a way that's substantially different from how it was run in the past?
That's an excellent question. We are facing unprecedented times. We have these 3 pandemics, as I indicated earlier, that have converged together. That is distinguishing my administration. Because of this crisis, we've had crises before in our community, but these 3 pandemics and an invisible enemy that's killing people in our community, and the disinformation campaign that we're seeing every day, has made it that I have to take matters to a much different level in leading the National Bar Association. Our lawyers have to be on the front lines and challenging in each of these 3 buckets. We have to be. We have to be. In the past, certainly, we're a social justice organization. So we've got from Thurgood Marshall to Constance Baker Motley to Ben Crump to Kim Keenan. There are thousands of magnificent leaders of our organization. But to lead in 3 pandemics where everything that we have to do is virtual, where I can't get on a plane and travel wherever I want to go to be at all, just like everybody else, makes my administration unique. But more importantly, our mandate this time, the charge that we have from our civil rights leaders, from our community, from Congressman Lewis prior to his death, and Reverend Jackson and I met in March to talk about our convention, to talk about my mandate, and to talk about my agenda, and to talk about the charge that they are giving to Black lawyers to get out there and protect the right to vote. You see, it's different. We have a presidential election every 4 years. We have elections throughout the time, so that's nothing new. But it's the circumstances and what this country is facing right now and what our communities are facing, that's what's different. That's what makes life as we know it so different, and that is why my administration is being so aggressive in its efforts to help and to have our lawyers out there helping the legal issues. We have not had young people being arrested simply because they're protesting peacefully. That's new. Not in a long time.
Are you able to walk us through or maybe give us a glimpse of how you'll be tackling those 3 pandemics, strategically, tactically, some of the, how you're going, you were saying with the times being unprecedented like they are, you're going to have to make Black lawyers be much more on the front line. So describe that, kind of illustrate for us like how that would happen, how that would manifest.
Certainly. And we've already begun the process. Let's start with election protection, or I call it election suppression. So there is what we know, there are many organizations, and these are our coalition groups, such as Transformative Justice Coalition, led by Barbara Arnwine. Barbara Arnwine is a National Bar member. Not only that, she and Tanya Clayhouse are the most senior advisors for the National Bar and my administration on election protection. So if we just take that bucket, what have we done? We've begun the training for Black lawyers and others throughout the country so that we can be trained at election protection during COVID. It's very different than any other time. Trained at how we can intervene, how we must be in a position to institute litigation in different jurisdictions. I can take the example of how it worked beautifully during the past elections in Georgia and in Kentucky. What happened? Well, in Georgia, I'm in Georgia. we had just the worst election suppression that I've seen in a long time. The new machines weren't working in certain precincts. Not all of them, but in certain precincts. There were not enough paper ballots for people to vote. We didn't have the volunteers. So it was just a mess. What should have taken 10 minutes, it took me almost 5 hours to vote. What did we do about that? I escalated this up, and so did others. And there was ultimately litigation based on our coalition partners, Transformative Justice Coalition, Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, ACLU, Rainbow Push Coalition. I literally called and escalated this up so that we could have our lawyers in place to do something about the problems that we were experiencing in Georgia. It's got to be quick. We have to be decisive. We have election protection lawyers that were on the spot and ready, and we were able to do the challenges. And that becomes important because that was just a very little glimpse into the problems we know that are going to happen in November. So I use that in Kentucky when, as you know, they got rid of 97% of the polling stations. And in the Black community, where we would have had polling stations close to where we live, it wasn't the case. People had to travel very far. So the national bar lawyers on the scene there in conjunction with our coalition partners and so many other groups helped to transport people from their homes to the polling station, provide food and water because there were people waiting in lines for a long time, despite the very, very difficult circumstances. The lawyers there, in conjunction with, of course, many non-lawyers and other organizations, were able to make a difference in ensuring and in protecting the right to vote. The same thing in Georgia, and that, frankly, has been mirrored throughout the country because we have a 50 statewide effort.
Well, you know, while I've got you for a couple more minutes, we're talking with Tricia C.K. Hoffler. She is the new president of the National Bar Association, and you can get more information at nationalbar.org, at National Bar as well. See, guys, there's so many questions here, and I'm sure we're going to have you back. I did want to ask you, as an attorney, you know, about your profession and we're in this unprecedented time where, you know, folks have to work virtually. Lawyers, especially in that kind of profession, have to work virtually. You know, you're kind of constrained and limited in many respects. What the law profession, what the legal profession is like right now for young Black people who are considering entering it, for Black people like yourself who are in it, and especially in the context of just the larger kinds of changes and disruptions that are happening in the legal space, in the space of jurisprudence. Talk a little bit about that. We've got you for a couple more minutes.
Absolutely. It is very, very difficult now for many lawyers, young black law students who are graduating, the challenges they're having with securing a job, because many of the employers that maybe confirmed a job have reversed their decision, rescinded their offers because of COVID. COVID has changed life as we know it for all lawyers, all practicing lawyers. But of course, when it comes to our lawyers, we get the brunt of that. So it's very difficult for law students coming out, but we need them now more than ever. That's the thing. That's the challenge. And that's another role that National Bar is playing in reaching out to those young lawyers, bringing them into our family, waiving fees, helping them with the administration of that. Many people can't take the bar exam, but they can study for it, and helping maybe with some of the fees for the bar exam. We have programs that are designed to help law students and to encourage law students, bringing them into our organization now for free, so that they can have the benefit of the mentoring and all that we have to offer, because they need it more now than ever. And we need Black lawyers now more than ever. They must continue and help us with this struggle.
Tricia, I don't know if we had to come up on a break. I don't know if we can keep you for just like 4 or 5 more minutes after break, or do you have that?
I do have the time. I will make the time. This is so important.
Excellent. And I know it's great to talk with you too, because normally when we both speak, we're on Santita Jackson's show.
Santita's show, yes.
Right, with WCPT. So this is the first time I've ever interviewed you. This is great. Just stand by for a minute, because I do have like 1 or 2 more real quick important questions for you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, we're still talking with National Bar Association President Tricia C.K. Hoffler, who's joining us here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations. Because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
WordRadio.com.
RG Electrical Inspections provides electrical inspections for realtors, licensed electricians, and homeowners. RG is a certified plans examiner and licensed underwriter providing assistance for PICO outages. RG is also listed on PICO's website. RG Electrical Inspections is a licensed and insured underwriter serving Philadelphia and surrounding areas. Call if you have plans to review today, 267-902-1655.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
Okay, we're just continuing our conversation with Tricia C.K. Hoffler. She is the new president, newly minted president of the National Bar Association. Go to nationalbar.org for more information on the National Bar Association, particularly if you are someone who is interested in the legal profession, and she joins us here. She's just given us several more minutes of our time. Let me ask you, CK, about voting rights, going back to election suppression and the role of the Black Lawyers Association and how aggressive that could be. I mean, are you all talking about sort of getting together and going like really ambitious here and saying, for example, if this hasn't already happened, filing massive voting rights class action lawsuits? A lot of folks out there wonder how aggressive are these massive national Black organizations going to get in a time like this? So you sound, I mean, I know you've been kind of in the trenches for a long time, particularly as it relates to the law, but particularly when we talk about issues like the Voting Rights Act, voter suppression, how to combat that, how to push back against that, how aggressive will Black lawyers be combined as under that umbrella of the National Bar Association?
I'm very aggressive. And for that, we're working with our coalition partners. The reason why I say coalition partners, when you are moving the pendulum, when there's this kind of election suppression, you want to already blend into the mechanisms and the infrastructure that exists and take it to the next level. So when we've got the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights that have been working with the ACLU, the Transformative Justice Coalition, where we have lawyers that are working these very issues, the infiltration of our lawyers heightens and magnifies the efforts that we can push forth as a group of lawyers that are fighting election suppression. So very aggressive. There's already been some litigation that's been instituted in different jurisdictions. What we need to do more of, and what our teams are exploring right now, has more to do with, in each state, what do we need to do in the 20 worst states where there's election suppression? What do we need to do? And so, because we have a 50 statewide effort, but we've identified the top 20 states, and we're doing focused training in those states because we're seeing new examples of election suppression that we didn't see because of COVID. So the litigation that has been instituted and the litigation that will continue right up to and through the day of the elections, and even after and during elections, is centered around the new levels of election suppression. That's going on right now. That's the message that I wanted to say. All we're doing is infiltrating more and more National Bar lawyers in that effort because people want to be involved. They want to fight that fight because, again, it's part of the mandate, protect the right to vote. And the only way we can do it is through the courts. And again, training and helping people. But the courts, that's a powerful, even in COVID, courts we can file lawsuits and issues are being heard, even if it's virtually.
How do you also close the awareness gap, CK? Like as far as an organization that's been around as long as the National Bar Association, but I always find that there's this disconnect, right, between like the grass tops and the grassroots. Folks who are just sort of your average rank and file black folks in the neighborhood who may be interested in the law, young black people. Maybe in high school who are saying, hey, I would love to be a lawyer one day, or I would love to be a judge or a prosecutor one day. How do you make them aware of an organization like the National Bar Association?
That's an excellent question. What we've done and what we're doing is we're working with our community organizations, grassroots, religious groups. There's no better way of communicating strong information than working with the churches, working with our Rainbow Push Coalition, working with the Urban League, working with different organizations to put out the word. We speak, and of course now during COVID, we can't go into schools and speak the way that we can, but we can do things virtually. That's the best way of getting out the word and elevating our profile, being on shows like your show so that people can say, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that there was an organization that represented over 66,000 black lawyers in this country, because people don't even know that there are that many. And so doing the circuit, elevating the profile from a media standpoint and social media standpoint is critical during this time. And that's the effort that we are doing, that I'm doing right now where we speak, because I have had a lot of experience with the media based on my cases. When you work, I was one of Willie Gary's partners for many years. And when you work in that zone, having worked on high profile cases where we made a difference, you do work a lot with the media. So that's a level of comfort that I have in talking about the issues and getting out the word so that people know there is such a thing as a national bar, and this is how you reach us, and these are things we're doing in the community, and this is our focus. And in COVID and police brutality, we're already there. We formed a historic alliance on COVID with the National Medical Association because we know it's a healthcare crisis. And Dr. McDougall and I were the newly sworn-in presidents of our organization. We work hand in hand regularly on issues because when you have a medical crisis, you need a legal component to be able to execute and implement things that you feel need to be disseminated to our community. So education is critical. So that's why I say our coalition partners, the partnerships that we formed, the legal component goes hand in hand, because people can only do so much in getting out their word, but if there's a need for a challenge, a need for using the infrastructure that lawyers have and that our organization has, it's important for us to work hand in hand, and that's what we're doing. We're doing it more than we ever had before because the time calls for that. I told my membership and black lawyers just universally, this is not the time to be asleep at the wheel and to look for somebody else to take action. We must take action because our communities are suffering, and so is our membership. So is our membership. So that's our duty.
Yeah, absolutely. Tricia C.K. Hoffler is new president of the National Bar Association. Go to nationalbar.org for more information, at National Bar on social media, on Twitter more specifically. She's been joining us here on Reality Check. I'm sure we'll have her back. C.K., thanks for your time. Always appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Charles. You have a blessed day and stay safe.
All right, you do the same. Stay safe and healthy. All right, we're going to open the phone lines at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065 and 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open right now. Give us your thoughts, too, on who and what the National Bar Association is. Give us your thoughts on. Give me your thoughts on what you expect from organizations like these. Whether it's the National Bar Association, we talked with the president of the National Bar Association just a few seconds ago, Tricia C.K. Hoffler. We also talked to the president of the National Medical Association yesterday, and Dr. Leon McDougall. So we have like regular conversations with these organizations. We talked with the new president of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So you have these large national organizations which are, their mission is built around representing black people and black interests. What do you expect from them? What do you want from them? What sort of agenda? When you heard that agenda, when she laid it out as the three pandemics: COVID-19, election suppression, police brutality. Did you agree with that? Do you think that that's the agenda, that's like our urgent agenda, our mission our calling at this moment in 2020. So do you agree with that? What would you like to know more about the National Bar Association? How would you like to get involved with those organizations? We're always curious, as we present these sorts of organizations to you, to the listening audience, particularly those out there who may not be familiar with them, may not know that they're in existence. I always like to know, I'd like to check in with folks and see, okay, well, what would you expect from these organizations? What did you hear that resonated with you? What did you hear that didn't resonate with you so much? 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Major primary that took place last night in Missouri, more specifically St. Louis, Missouri, had an activist who had started her rise in politics in the 2014 Ferguson, Missouri protest, unseated a longtime Democratic incumbent, longtime Congressional Black Caucus member, William Lacey Clay. So Cori Bush, sister who was at one time homeless and raising 2 kids on her own, particularly before the Ferguson protests, and has just, and she did pose a challenge to Lacey Clay back in 2018. That was unsuccessful. She rose from the ashes, and in what is being described as a stunning upset, she trounced. In fact, her turnout was pretty significant. She trounced current Congressman William Lacey Clay, who is also, he's William Lacey Clay Jr., the son of Lacey Clay Sr., who had served in that position for 30 years before he did. He's been there for about 20 years. And so she wins that Democratic primary and is presumed to be the next Congresswoman and the first Black Congresswoman of the state of Missouri, of the Show Me state, in the state's history. So massive upset. Congressional Black Caucus is on notice. Congressional Black Caucus, CBC is on notice, because there's been a lot of these challenges from young upstart Black advocates and Black activists, and once again, there's a reckoning that's going on. The Black political space, the Black political field has this very peculiar and also troubling disconnect between its grass tops. The folks like William Lacey Clay, who arrived in the position where he is, very much due to the fact that his father before him was the congressman in that seat. So, you got a little bit of like political nepotism there, because then when his father passed away and then that seat became vacant, William Lacey Clay Jr., he fell right in, comfortably into that seat. People are getting tired of that kind of status quo politics. And there's a lot of that that's been the case within the Congressional Black Caucus. Not all Congressional Black Caucus members, but you're starting to see like a new generation and new upstarts of Congressional Black Caucus members. Many of them who aren't coming from political families, many of them who are just getting a start in politics. And on many levels, it's a good thing to see. It's a very healthy thing to see. It's something that needs to happen. But I've always talked about like this massive disconnect between the grass tops and the grassroots. And the more that the grass tops ignores the demands and the voices and the needs of the grassroots, of folks in the trenches, of folks on a daily and routine basis who are dealing with these kinds of struggles, particularly in severe socioeconomic distress, there will be a reckoning politically, and that's really what happened last night. And so the chickens came home, the political chickens came home to roost for William Lacey Clay, and that happened in the form of Cori Bush. Cori Bush wins, so well done there. Let me go to Tyrone out of North Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Tyrone?
Well, peace and blessings, my good brother. How you be
Peace,
today?
peace. How you doing, sir? All right.
Hey, look, hey, Charles, I always give you your accolades, my brother. And I mean, I give it from my heart, my man, because you are always on point in terms of, sharing this information that folks we can really, really use to make things better if we really wanted to do so. But Charles, if you don't mind me just doing a little, stepping in the past real quick, because
Sure.
when that young brother was killed You know, the first thing that went to my head is when I spoke to you and Vincent when we were up at Barton Garden. And remember, I don't know if you remember that conversation I told you and
I remember
Vincent.
that.
Yes, we cannot allow folks to just come and shoot up our community and be able to walk away like nothing happened. We cannot continue to allow them to do that. But, you know, I just wanted to preference just that comment with taking everything that you have been speaking about, the sister, you know, from the Bar Association, you know, all these things that we have in our midst to help us. You know, Charles, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it as clearly as I can say it. Brother Sultan Ahmed put a proposal on the table that folks need to really jump on. We need to stop putting Band-Aids on major surgery that we need in our community. Now, to put together this human labor bond is what we need. We need something that's going to have a major impact in our community because it's just too many things coming at us, Brother Charles, and you know it. There's too many things coming at us, and we keep trying to piecemeal to deal with it. And I believe, just like in Congress and the Senate and all those folks and City Council, everybody is battling and trying to come up with proposals to help deal with this situation. That human bond of putting, you know, 600 million or whatever number there is for us to deal with what is happening in our city, we need to do it. So, my brother, that's what I want to share today. And I really would appreciate if folks really look into us coming up with something that doesn't piecemeal us trying to get out of all these things that are holding us down, but coming up with something that I really believe will have impact in terms of dealing with all the issues that we are confronted with in our community. And our young folks, they are in such desperate need. So please, ladies and gentlemen, let's research putting so, you know, we're talking about reparations and all these different types of things that are owed to us. But if we put this bond together, this is something, an investment that we have already paid for, and we're just trying to get it in one form to help us deal with, you know, the many things we're confronted with. You know, my brother, I always appreciate you allowing me to share, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Tyrone. It's always good to hear from you. Good to hear your voice. Thanks for calling in. Let me take a break, and when we come back, phone lines remain open. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065. Toll-free, it is 866-361-0900. Phone lines remain open. Phone lines will be open into the 11 o'clock hour. And we are here live on Reality Check. It is the midweek edition of Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
In Pennsylvania, everyone counts, and everyone needs to participate in the census. Our population count determines our voice in government and how much federal funding our communities receive for health care, food assistance, education, transportation, housing, and more. So every infant and child, every foreign and U.S. citizen, everyone matters. For a stronger future, we all need to count. To learn more, go to pa.gov/census.
Word Radio Digital Tip of the Week with Stephanie Humphrey.
I'm your Tech Life expert, Stephanie Humphrey, and this is your Word Digital Tip of the Week. Two-factor authentication, or two-step verification, is a security measure that requires you to provide additional information before you can log into a specific account online. You may have to enter a code that gets sent to you via text message or use an authenticator app. It's an extra step that might seem inconvenient, but it's there to keep you extra secure when you're shopping, banking, or connecting with others online using social media. Two-factor authentication is designed to keep you safe from unauthorized users trying to access your accounts, and it's definitely worth it. You can visit the different websites you use regularly and search the help section for security topics, ask a friend or relative to help you get set up, or type two-factor authentication plus the account you want to secure into Google. Any way you do it, adding another layer of protection to your online accounts is a good way to keep your information safe on the web. Stay tuned to WURD for more tech tips and stay connected with us at wordradio.com.
The Word Digital Tip of the Week is brought to you by Comcast NBC Universal. Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Phone lines are open. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Just as I was saying before, that was the big news that coming out of the evening. Major upset. Activist Cori Bush activists from Ferguson in 2014. That's how she started to make a name for herself. Started to enter the political arena, unseating in a Democratic primary Missouri congressman, longtime Missouri congressman, William Lacey Clay, who and his father before him was in Congress for 30 years in that St. Louis seat. So it's a major upset. A lot of people talking about that. Congressional Black Caucus on notice for that. Also some other races. Chris Kobach also was running for the Republican Senate primary in Kansas. He lost. So that some Republicans breathing a sigh of relief. Chris Kobach, who is very much known as sort of the godfather of voter fraud, of that myth or that mythology surrounding voter fraud. But he's been very active in that voter fraud, quote unquote, voter fraud scene for quite some time. So a hasty end to his political career, because he's been trying to make a comeback and was unable to do that yesterday in the Kansas primary as well. So something to definitely look at. And that's that open Senate seat in Kansas becoming something of a competitive race. It's not up for grabs. It was definitely competitive for Democrats for the first time in a long time. So, as the battle for the U.S. Senate ensues as well. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open. I see where Brother Tyrone's coming from. Just a few sort of observations there, because I've heard that sentiment quite often and quite a bit, as people are trying to sort through exactly what's going on with Philadelphia. Philadelphia going through its set of pandemics. It's going through COVID-19. It's already had the poverty before the COVID-19, and now it's high violence, rising violent crime in the city as well. We're at about 257 homicides in 2020 to date. It's been consistent for several days now, 34% above where we were this time last year. There were about 192 homicides at this time last year. There are now 257 homicides to date in 2020 in Philadelphia. So a few observations. One is the feeling that there are all sorts of multiple efforts. A feeling of that, that there's a reinvention of the wheel that's constantly taking place, and there's also a lot of efforts which are occurring in silos. And so I have heard this talked about quite frequently or observed upon as far as like the response. I could kind of hear that frustration in Brother Tyrone's voice and sort of channeling what I feel like, or I believe I was hearing there. One, just the lack of a unified approach. There is this appetite, there's this thirst, this hunger in a place like Philadelphia for a very robust, a very muscular and aggressive, unified approach. I've heard this, and some folks will call in. I've heard people, raise the possibility of some kind of big, sort of black agenda summit in Philly, or some kind of big summit effort, some kind of unified, everyone's at the same table summit or convening, where everyone's kind of learning about what the other is doing, and not doing so kind of isolated from one another or unaware of what the other is doing, and seeing where there are openings for synergy or for collaboration. So because we're all trying to kind of reach the same outcome here. So that's one. Two, it's the lack of inclusion in when public officials, when elected officials, city officials are planning around these crises. It was troubling to hear, especially a couple of weeks ago when I was co-moderating this discussion on violence that the Black Clergy affiliate put together about rising violence in Philadelphia, and it was very troubling to hear advocates, these are some fairly prominent advocates in the city of Philadelphia around this issue, this question of violence, and they were saying that they weren't included in the mapping phase or the drafting phase of that big, bold, ambitious anti-violence program or plan that Mayor Kenney had laid out. Like, they weren't included in it. They didn't know about it until it rolled out. One advocate admitted, hey, I didn't know about it until I started hearing about it in the news. So it's like this lack is, that once again, that detachment, some of it unintentional, some of it frankly is intentional. It's just like, folks who are in those positions of authority, folks who are elected officials, and you continue to do this at your own peril, where you feel like you don't need input from folks down at the neighborhood level, where you feel like you don't need to create a channel between a constant channel and a constant flow of conversation and input and insights and analysis from folks who are down at the street level, so to speak, and also at that grassroots level, at that activist level, those folks who are really truly in the trenches who've been impacted. And so you start having situations like Cori Bush out in St. Louis, or Kendra Brooks right there in Philly, right? Because you suddenly get comfortable in these positions that you're in these positions of authority, and you're not listening to what people in the grassroots or in the trenches, people who are going through it, are saying that you're supposed to represent. And so that's very troubling. So the city's got to be a lot better and a lot more intentional at that. Let me go to Maurice out of Southwest, who's calling in for a reality check. Maurice.
Hey, Charles.
What's
I
happening?
was hoping to hear some good news from you today, but I'm almost want to throw up in my mouth right now. Because people don't understand what's going on with this city. Violence and gentrification go together like Coke and Pepsi. They don't understand. If the neighborhood is violent, that means people want to move out that been there for years. And then they can move into new people. That's why our crime is so bad. That's why we're the poorest city in the nation. That's why. People don't understand. It all goes together. Well, look, I would trade for any coalition they would come up for anti-violence. I would say, if it was normal conditions, I would say I would want a councilman I could talk to. But we got as many councilmen as we can have, and nothing's being done. The reason they don't have any input in the violence is because they're not asking to be part of the coalition. All they got to do, they got the mayor right there. All they got to say, look, man, I got some ideas. Well, what do you mean you got to look at the news to find out? That's just like asking your boss, what's going on with the business? He don't know. This is what I'm trying to tell people. That's why I have no friends on city council, because they're the major part of city council. I mean, and then
I'll say this, Maurice, real quick point. I'll let you finish. I think it's a very good point. Some people may counter. They may say, hey, we've tried that. Like, we do that. We do that on a regular routine basis. And it still feels like we hit a brick wall, or we're not being listened to.
Well, if they hit a brick wall, that's why they got a city council. That's why they go to the media. Hey, look, I'm telling them, what are they doing? The mayor done had a plan since last November, a 100-day plan. He had one back then. We don't know the plan. I mean, what plan do you have when you don't tell the neighbors the plan? Come on. What kind of plan do you have? Look, I live out here in Southwest Philly, which I call the New Badlands. I don't even see cops around here. You know, I ain't worried about no cop doing nothing to me because I can't find one. So this is what I'm saying. When you really doing something to police the neighborhoods, you got cops walking, you got where's the bike patrols? I ain't seen a bike patrol in Southwest Philly this whole summer. You know, I mean, where are they at? Why aren't they signing in when they come to the bad neighborhoods? Why aren't they have sign-in sheets at the deli? Huh? That's where people gather that's doing drugs and crimes. They gather around the deli. You don't see that. They ride right past the deli and wave. Come on. I'm out there. I see what's going on. And here's the most important part. We're so distracted on other things that we have an election in 3 months. Who's reached out to the young people, our hardest voting bloc? Who's reached out to them to hear what they got to say, or why they're not voting, or if they're going, or who they're interested in? We don't hear that. We don't hear none of that. Has anybody asked a young person who would they like to see as vice president? No, they're not there. When we have all these Zoom meetings and all these coalitions get together, do they even have a young person on the panel at all? No. And I don't mean no college kid or some educated. I'm talking about a street kid that's out there because they see no future in Philadelphia. They don't see, hey, look, one day I'm going to be this. Philadelphia has told the black community that we're not going to invest any money in you. We're not going to do anything for you. And when these young people, the people are killing are under 30 years old. There's no old heads going around shooting people up. Do they feel like putting some money in some community centers or doing something with it? There's nothing on the agenda for them. Nothing. So if there's a problem, you can look right at City Hall, your council people, and ask them, how come they're not involved more in the neighborhood? They know the crime. A lot of them still live in the city. They know what's going on. But what are they doing, which I always say? They see a drug dealer that they know of. Hi, Jimmy. What do you mean, hi, Jimmy? Jimmy, you need to get up out of here. This is the problem, is that we got a government here that we're 40-something% of the city, or 47% of the city population, and we're only 2% of the businesses. That's where your problem is, because they have no future of business or ownership. Because when they go to a store in their neighborhood, they don't see nobody black they're passing money to.
It's a city 44% black, but it doesn't feel like it.
Right, but they don't see any. But in their daily business, they don't see no black stores. You know how we say buy black? Where's a black store at? Come on. Let's be real about this. Everybody keeps skipping over the problem. Election is in less than 90 days. What kind of game are we playing?
Yeah, what's our game plan?
Plus, they don't want to expand the voting thing, because then we'll start looking at them and realize that they're not doing the job they're supposed to. So they don't want to really see a large voter turnout, because if we do, we'll understand that they don't belong in this seat. So, Charles, I'll let you go ahead and handle the rest. But this thing is disgusting, and people around Philadelphia, other cities, they're talking about us right now. We might say some things about them, but they looking at us like city of brotherly love. No, city of brotherly, let's get them black folks out of there. That's what's going on.
All right, Maurice, I got to let you go. Thanks for the comments. Always appreciate you calling in, Maurice out of Southwest. Let me take a break, and when we come back on the other side, actually we have State Senator Kevin Parker from New York, from Brooklyn, is going to join us next, and we're going to talk about some recent legislation that he had passed on Juneteenth and Black History. So that just recently passed. We'll be talking about that, also getting an update on how things are happening and what was once the epicenter of the global pandemic, or the pandemic, excuse me. And so getting just an update from him. And we're just going to take a quick break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with State Senator Kevin Parkin, who's going to be checking in with us here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Weather and traffic to keep you informed for your morning commute on Wake Up with Word. Weekdays 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. hosted by Solomon Jones. Right here on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
Show some love for your favorite neighborhood with Word Radio. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays now through August 20th from 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. Shining a light on Philadelphia's neighborhoods with a focus on neighborhood history, Philadelphia's freedom fighters, and community resources that are helping to shape the city's future. Mondays with the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith, and Thursdays with Andrea Lawful Sanders. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays, 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WordRadio.com, the Word Radio app, and on Word TV via YouTube and Facebook. The Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Wells Fargo and Pico. Home of the Happy Hour. With Sincerely Sarita, this is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at WordRadio.com and on the Word Radio app. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. We are back at it here on the midweek edition of Reality Check. Join us now, coming back to give us some updates on what he's up to, is State Senator Kevin Parker, State Senator out of the Empire State of New York. Go to nysenate.gov for more information. He is also chair of the Council on Communities of Color for the Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference, so coordinating activities in all northeastern states, particularly for legislators of color in all northeastern states, so including Pennsylvania. That is, Pennsylvania also part of Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference. He joins us by phone here on Reality Check. Senator, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great and grateful. How are you?
All right, good. How are things? Last time we talked to you, things were real sobering in New York, especially in Brooklyn, in your district, where you are. And how are things now a few months later?
Things are better, but there's still people out here struggling. I think that we are, people are a little still numb from what we went through in the end of March through May and the beginning of June, with as many people being sick and people dying and, not being able to bury loved ones and all the things related to the initial pack of COVID. Now people are trying to figure out how do they manage day to day in a kind of COVID reality, right? And so everything from food insecurity, which is a real significant problem, to our unemployment system being still backed up, because again we have a record number of people nationally, and of course New York is a microcosm of that, applying for unemployment insurance. People have lost their jobs. People don't have income. People are trying to see what's going on with the federal government. People have a lot of anxiety, wondering whether the kind of sickness that we experienced again in April and May is going to come back to us because of the lack of leadership from the federal government and what we're seeing happening nationally. A stress trying to keep young people in the house, not going to parties. Having to come out with a mask. Still being wary about just all of the things that are going on. I mean, some people are still scared to leave their home. And so, we're New Yorkers, so we're making it. And as the governor says, we're New York tough. But we're fighting a good fight.
No, and thanks for that update. It's always good to check in with you about that too. And now, recently, I did want to transition to another topic. As far as Black history is concerned. I know it's August, but you just recently passed legislation making Juneteenth an official statewide holiday in New York City. So talk about the significance of this, because you teach African American studies, you teach political science, you've taught it for a number of years in a number of colleges in New York. This is a big deal, passing this type of legislation, and especially at this time. But what are we seeing as far as like this growth in interest in Black history, and a lot of that channeled through Juneteenth this year? This legislation puts New York on now a short list of a few states that have made that a national holiday. How is this significant? Is this going to push societies, is this going to push communities to start making Black history curriculum universal?
Well, first of all, thank you. Yeah, so as you indicated, I'm an Africologist. I've been doing this, for almost 30 years now. Been to Egypt with Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, has studied with Asha Kwesi and a lot of other people, who do this work. And so it's been something that I've been looking forward to. The bill was initially actually introduced by the former majority leader in the Senate, John Sampson. And so definitely want to give him credit for introducing this bill a number of years ago. I'm glad we finally got it across the finish line. And let's be very clear that this didn't happen because of the fight that we did. It did and it didn't, right? And because the moment caused this, right? And right now, what white people are doing is they're scrambling. And so what they're trying to do is deconstruct some of the symbols of white supremacy as opposed to deconstructing many of the structures of white supremacy, in the hopes that we will be happy with the deconstruction of the symbols as opposed to the structure. And so, they're happy to help you take down names and rechange streets and give you a little holiday here and there. I'm happy we got the holiday. We should have done it a long time ago. It's cute. Glad we did it. Thank you to the governor for putting it forward. But it doesn't address many of the systemic problems that we absolutely need to address. And you did touch on that. And hopefully this is a stepping stone to a conversation about a Black history, Black culture curriculum, and even more importantly, a curriculum of inclusion that does not just talk about African American contributions, but Latino contributions, Asian contributions, Native American contributions, right? Gay and lesbian and trans contributions to our society, and that's a next step that we all need to be on in this conversation.
Yeah. You were describing how white people are scrambling right now in this Black Lives Matter moment. How long do you think this moment is going to last? I mean, is this moment going to last through till the end of this election, and then after the election, depending on what the outcome is, then it just fizzles away? Are we seeing something long term here? Are we seeing something where you do expect it at some point, particularly you being in a legislature, in a major state legislature, you do expect it at some point to transform into the structural and transforming into the substantive? Because I agree with you on that. I think that, definitely they want to do kind of these low-hanging fruit efforts, to make it seem like, hey, we're listening to you when, Black Lives Matter emblazoned everywhere on every store, but that's not getting to the actual core, the cheese of the problem.
That's absolutely. Look, I hope that this movement endures. If we go back and look at the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, that was at least, you can, depending on where you begin it and end it, but if you talk about the period between the Montgomery Boy boycott and the Voting Rights Act, that was about a decade. That was about a decade, right? I'm hoping that it doesn't take us 10 years. We also, we're in a very different place over those 10 years, and so hopefully it won't take quite that long. But we certainly need something that pushes past Election Day. And so I'm hoping, I'm being supportive. I put in a number. I'm doing kind of my job. I kind of try to stay in my lane, right? So I'm not necessarily out there. I'm not painting murals on the street, and I'm not protesting, but I am writing legislation. And, we have a lot of legislation that we put forward around police reform, around things that we believe help begin the process of deconstructing white supremacy in our state government. And I'm going to be pushing hard to make sure that legislation gets done. Having a lot of conversations right now about employment and about small business development, because that's going to be one of the keys to our survival over the next couple of months, particularly as we look at the fact that the SBA is saying that 41% of the Black businesses that closed during COVID are probably not going to reopen. And that's compared to 20% of the white businesses. And we are compared to whites disproportionately employed in small businesses than white people. And so we're going to have to really, step our entrepreneurial game up, get creative, and start understanding where the money is, right? Like, they have a book called, Who Moved the Cheese, right? And we got to kind of figure out where they move the cheese to and get to it.
So you were talking about how folks are in their lanes, right? You have folks in the advocacy activist lanes, and then you have people like yourself, lawmaker, legislator. You're in that legislation creation lane. You're creating policy, and that's important. That's significant too. I'm looking at what happened last night in Missouri, in St. Louis, Missouri, with the stunning upset of William Lacey Clay. Long time were activists from the Ferguson era, Cori Bush. At one time, she was homeless, raising 2 kids, and then she just rose to prominence, political prominence, and now she's unseating a 20-year congressman. Talk about that. How do we get people to appreciate that policy-making lane? Because I think that resulted from, and we talked about this before, that resulted from that disconnect between folks on your level, right, on that influence or grass tops level, and folks on the grassroots level, a person like a Cori Bush. And we're seeing that play out, not just in St. Louis, but in a number of places. How do we fix that gap? But also, how do we get folks in the activist advocacy space to appreciate more and more that policy making lane?
I don't even know if they need to appreciate it as much as they just need to partner. I mean, if you're in the streets and you're saying that you want to see change, right, then by definition, you want to see different legislation. You want to see different policies. And if you have, African American, Latino, and Asian legislators out here who are willing to make that change, I'm not asking for appreciation. I'm just simply asking for partnerships. Come talk to other legislators. Tell us what you want to see done. Let us go through the process, right, of partnering together. And I've had that kind of outreach and that kind of relationship with a number of groups historically. You know, I'm a longtime member of my NAACP, the Brooklyn NAACP branch. And shout out to my president there, L. Joy Williams, and the folks doing the important work with the NAACP. I'm active with the Urban League, and shout out to Arbor Rice, the president and CEO of the New York Urban League, and the work that we do there. And I'm active with those organizations. Been active with Reverend Sharpton and the folks of NAN, people like Tamika Mowry, Kristen John Foy, Kevin McCall, all people who have been on the ground in Brooklyn. My large brother, Tony Herbert, who does a lot of that work as well. So there's a number of activists who I've historically have been engaged with, Malcolm X grassroots movement. But all of those folks I have had conversations with about legislation and policies and things we can be doing together to push the ball forward. And I'm saying for new organizations, I'm starting to do that outreach myself with some of the organizations, but I would love for some of them to reach out to me and say to me, KP, this is what we're looking at. This is what we'd like to see done. How do we get this done? How do we put this legislation in? How do we advance this policy? Because the changes that you're looking to see done are very real in this time. What they didn't have, right, in 1955 to 1965 was a black, speaker in the assembly in New York State. They didn't have a president pro tem who's a black woman. They didn't have an attorney general who was a black woman in the state of New York, right? Like people were talking about Wakanda. We got Wakanda here in New York if they used to. People don't know this, Charles.
That's right.
We have the largest delegation of African American women elected to a legislature in the history of the United States right here in the state of New York. So the things that people are looking to get done can get done, but you have to reach out to folks in the legislature, in the council, and make demands of us, right?
Yeah.
And more directly, right? More of a conversation than just defund the police, right? It has to be about what does that defunding look like. And for me, that's looked like a bill I put in that creates a non-police response to mental health, homeless, and substance abuse calls, right? A bill I put in that creates a residency requirement for the NYPD, right? A bill that I put in that creates a standard for excessive use of force around law enforcement in the state of New York, right? That's what defund the police looks like from my perspective. But I need to make sure that the people who are out there on the front line are vibing with what my understanding is, and that doesn't happen unless there's two-way communication.
Yeah. No, I see what you're getting at with that. I agree because I think that there's it's been like a long time coming, the need for like a civics lesson on how this all works. But when those connections are made, like how you have it laid out, how you're operating in New York, how you're operating in your district, in the 21st Senatorial District, and just nationwide, and what you do through CSG, that's important. Making those connections. But as you make those connections, you're also kind of taking people. It's a teachable moment. It's an opportunity to kind of show people, well, hey, this is how this process works. This is where I can take your vision. I can take whatever you're trying to imagine or reimagine and how your district can work, how you can benefit as a constituent. I can then take that vision and I can craft it into an actual piece of policy or into a bill or something that could conceivably that could pass. Something that could actually make the kinds of changes that you want. And so but it's very tough. What do you, I know you have coming up, particularly as chair of the Council of Communities of Color, you have coming up later this month, the CSG ERC, the Council of Communities of Color, you're going to be doing a summit. Normally we'll all meet, because I'm always there. I've been there for the past several years. We'll all meet in a physical location. We met in Pittsburgh last year. Rye, New York the year before, and then Connecticut the year before. But this time we're going to do it virtually. What do you think those conversations are going to be like, Senator, as we convene as a Council of Communities of Color? You're bringing all these different legislators of color together. What do you think the priorities are going to be? What do you think the tenor or the tone of that conversation will be, especially when we're trying to do it in a virtual environment?
Well, I think that, people like me, you, and Debbie Ann Page, who, is the sharp end of the sword around a lot of the important issues in CSG in the Eastern Regional Conference, we brought sexy back, right? Like we were talking about this stuff for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I think they were paying a little bit of attention, but I think we now have everybody's full attention, vis-a-vis the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I think that, some of the things that we've been suggesting in terms of a conversation that is more than just a, communities of concern conversation, but then that transcends housing and education and healthcare and energy and veterans affairs, right? Like, I think now you got to start looking at all of that stuff within the lens of how do these issues affect African American, Latino, and Asian people, and how do we, in fact, push the ball forward in terms of providing services and simultaneously dealing with the issues of systematic white supremacy.
That's going to be very important. And the other thing too is, as far as like, what are you starting to see from like your white lawmaking legislative colleagues? Are they thinking more intentionally about equity or about equity issues when they're crafting legislation that even like on its face looks like it doesn't have anything to do, at least first glance, it doesn't have anything to do with equity, or it doesn't have anything to do with race or racism? Are they starting to understand that, hey, listen, every piece of legislation you put together, every law that you're looking at creating, it has to have some sort of equity component in it. You have to be keeping people of color or diverse communities, black, brown, indigenous communities in mind when you're putting this all together, when you're putting budgets together, particularly with slim budgets or the way budgets are right now in states like New York.
So, Charles, is this a Senator Parker answer, or you want me to keep it funky?
Keep it funky.
Okay. So this is just me and you, right? This is just between me and you and the several million listeners that are paying attention to this conversation.
Right.
White legislators are keeping up hard for white supremacy, and I'm not even talking about Republicans. I'm talking about Democrats. They keeping up hard for white supremacy. It is a fight in the legislature, in the.
we lost Kevin Parker. So right when he was about to make that point, when he was keeping it funky, and so I hope that wasn't speaking of intentional. But anyway, we'll see if we can try to get him back. While we got him for a couple of moments, we lost him. We were talking with State Senator Kevin Parker, and he was just sharing with us some of his experiences in the legislature and what it's like right now, particularly in a time like this, being a black state legislator, and in a major capital like Albany. And we hear this type of experience all the time shared from black state legislators in a place like Pennsylvania, what they have to go through in Harrisburg. So, we do that occasionally here on Reality Check, where we bring on different black state legislators from across the country. They come on, they share their experiences inside those state capitals. Go ahead. Kevin, can you hear us?
Yep, I can.
Okay, what was that point you're making?
We're getting ready to tell the truth.
Right.
So like I was saying, before I was so rudely interrupted by the man who apparently don't want the truth be told. No, but the situation is that white legislators, and I'm talking about Democratic white legislators, in the state of New York are caping up for white supremacy. And I'm not every single one of them, but by and large, we're having a fight just for moderate conversation around deconstruction white supremacy. I mean, and let's just even on, we were the first state in the country to do something around police reform, right? We did 10 bills, 4 of them were mine. Actually, 2 others I wrote the first drafts of, right? And those are bills that have been sitting in my catalog for about 10 years. So it wasn't like we did anything new and exciting, right? Since then, I've drafted about 12 new bills on police reform of things that need to still be done, right? And we can't even get a consideration of those things, even with a black leader, because of the pushback from white people who are too afraid of the white police who live in their communities, or the fact that we may be going, quote unquote, too far, too fast, right? And it's like, this sounds like the same stuff that people were talking about in 1964. This is the same thing. When Dr. King was talking about why we can't wait. This is the same kind of stuff he was talking about in a letter from a Birmingham jail. I tell people all the time, my favorite writing by King is a letter from a Birmingham jail, because in that letter, he's not talking to white supremacists. He's actually talking to the people who are supposed to be his friends and allies, and how the fact they were pushing back, saying he's going too far, too fast, right? In the wake of the passing of Congressman John Lewis, part of what we heard is when he spoke at the March on Washington, they made him rewrite his speech because he was going too far. They felt like he was going too far, too fast. And so, that's a real thing. So don't think just because New York has a Democratic governor, a Democratic mayor, Democratic mayor in the city of New York, Democratic legislatures, and it's essentially a blue state, that all of a sudden everything is all good and white supremacy don't live here. I mean, in reality, we got in New York City a police commissioner who is hired by a white mayor with a black wife who was elected by black people, who's walking around here talking reckless to black legislators about police reform, right? And so so there's the struggle continues, and you have to continue to fight. I mean, what they say that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
Yeah.
And and we're not even free yet. So we don't even it's not even at a point to get vigilant yet. We still in the fight. And so I think that we are in the state legislature, I think amongst blacks, Latinos, and Asians, determined to continue to push the ball forward. We are looking towards the young people in the street right now, kicking up dust to continue to do that, because it's that pressure, it is that dynamic, it's that energy, and frankly the fear of white people to lose their economic base that has created an environment in Albany, in our state capital here in New York, to get some real change done.
We've been talking with State Senator Kevin Parker. He represents the 21st Senatorial District in the state of New York. Go to nysenate.gov for more information on him. He is on social media and highly engaged at Senator Parker on Twitter. You can reach him there. He's been joining us, as he occasionally does, here on Reality Check. He's also chair of the Council on Communities of Color for the Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference. They have their annual meeting coming up virtually at the end of this month. Actually, I'll be moderating a cluster of discussions. I'll send out more information about that later on this month. Typically, we broadcast live from there on, when they meet at physical locations, but we're going to be doing this virtually this year. We've been talking with the chair of that effort, Senator Parker. Senator Parker, always a pleasure. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
No, the pleasure is mine, and you keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Charles.
All right. We'll talk again. Take care. It's been a long time since I've seen that brother, too, so I definitely miss him. One of the many people I miss while we've been in Apocalypse and the Four Horsemen. So, I'm just looking forward to just seeing folks in person at some point once everything is safe or measurably safe when we get on the other side of this thing. But always good to talk with him. He's doing a lot of work. He and a lot of other legislators, folks that in that battle in the trenches, that is another trench in that battle against white supremacy, and it's happening, it's unfolding in those state capitals. So we try to bring you that conversation as much as we can here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side in this 11 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Peter Sherman. He's the Vice President of Programs for Contest Every Race. So we're going to have continued discussion about what's happening in 2020 and many of the players and operators on that political landscape. So let's take a break. We'll be right back here on Reality Check, midweek, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
He was the heart of your family, and he taught you our history. He helped you fix your first flat. He was the best backyard DJ around, and every time he'd tell a story, he'd own the room. But now more than ever, he may feel alone. Today, older adults and their loved ones are struggling to connect, in a time when connection has never been more important. But there is something we can do. Embrace our older loved ones through StoryCorps Connect. With StoryCorps Connect, you can honor seniors remotely with an interview about their life. Every interview will be archived at the Library of Congress, becoming part of American history, so that years from now, future generations can listen in.
All right, Grandpa, what's one piece of advice you have for me?
Just 3 words, sweetheart. Live with courage. The man that had the best stories still has plenty of stories to tell. So connect virtually and share the conversation of a lifetime at storycorpsconnect.org/AARP. Connect, honor, share. StoryCorps Connect. A message from AARP, StoryCorps, and the Ad Council.
No fear, just facts. WURD.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word, no, not the station, but this word, J-O-B, that is. And our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorosos.com for details.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Phone, sorry, that phone lines are not open. Actually, we have our next guest who's coming up. Just want to talk with him for a few minutes. Vice President of Programs for Contest Every Race, Peter Sherman. Peter Sherman is Vice President of Programs for Contest Every Race. Contest Every Race, unleashing, rolling out a new effort to recruit challengers against 1,000 Republican incumbents, city, state, and federal. They're looking at doing, kind of going beyond sort of the 50-state strategy and looking at every uncontested elected office. There are plans to contest about 100,000 elected offices. So contest every race, more on them at contesteveryrace.com. And he joins us, I understand, by phone right now, right here on Reality Check. How are you doing, Peter? Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Show.
All right, excellent.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Thanks so much. What are we trying to do with Contest Every Race? Just gave a little bit of an introduction there. The name kind of speaks for itself, right? But what races are you focused on? Which states are the most contestable to you?
Sure. Well, Pennsylvania is a big one. The reason we're with you today is that we have just crossed an important milestone of having recruited candidates, more than 1,000 candidates, to challenge Republicans in local races across the country, such as city council and school board and county commissioner all across the country. 250 of those were right there in Pennsylvania, and 150 of those challengers won their races. So this is part of a major national blue wave that's happening, and we're honored to be helping make it happen. What Contest Every Race does is we partner with state Democratic parties like the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, where we partnered with Sincere Harris and the chair, Nancy Mills, to identify any local race, any town council race, any school board race, anywhere across the state, and we do this in many states, where there have been Republican incumbents who have been entrenched for decades, and no Democrat has been stepping up to challenge them, basically because most of these are in pretty rural places like central Pennsylvania, where the progressive bench just doesn't run as deep as it fortunately does in places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And so what we then do is we partner with the state party. We also partner with major constituency groups like Move On, Black Voters Matter, Mi Gente, et cetera. And we send a text message to every single Democrat and every single member of our partner groups in those places, like hypothetically, I'm not checking facts here, but hypothetically, if Altoona was one of those places where there might be a Republican incumbent school board member, we would send a text message to every Democrat in Altoona saying, hey, would you be interested in running for school board in Altoona? And if you say maybe, then we'll give you texts that tell you everything you need to know to exactly how to file to become an official candidate for office and how to run effectively so you can win. And as I said, 250 candidates in Pennsylvania alone have stepped up to run, and 150 of them have won. And that's part of 1,000 candidates who've stepped up in the last 2.5 years across the country. And we are targeting 100,000 of them.
And in Pennsylvania, that's mostly state and federal. I know there's, Harrisburg, Democrats are trying to make Harrisburg up for grabs. Is it just across the board, city, state, federal?
We focus on the local races. There's so much attention appropriately at the White House, the Senate, in Congress, and usually at the state ledge level too. What's been neglected for so long, going back almost 50 years to the Powell memo, is the Republicans have been ruthless about recruiting right-wing ideologues and packing every local office with, people who come up through the ranks from nowhere, like, Scott Walker in Wisconsin, for example, is a great example of, just a right-wing nutcase who has no qualification other than his ideology. But he was brought up through the farm team and was able to really take hold of a really important state because we weren't defending our rightful access to power. So what this is about is making sure that we contest every race. We give the Republicans a reality check that there's no more, free pass into office. And we're giving them a fight everywhere, primarily at the school board and the city council level, the county commissioner level, and then people are in the system. They're on the bench and they work their way up over time. And then you have candidates for state leg in the states that are hard to fill, and then Congress, et cetera.
Yeah, you have a lot of different groups that you're collaborating with. They all claim to be, doing special, unique, or aggressive things in the space, particularly in an election year like that. And I've always noticed, we bring them on this program from time to time, and my background is in strategy work, and it just kind of fell into this. But I hear a whole lot of organizations kind of wanting to do kind of new, interesting, aggressive things on the landscape, want to unseat incumbents, they want to disrupt the status quo, disrupt politics. What makes you feel like contest every race is different, or what are people telling you as far as like what's the differentiator here with contest every race?
So first of all those other groups are doing amazing, important work. The niche that we are filling is we are focusing at the bottom of the ballot, the most local races, and we are doing recruiting for them on a mass scale. So most recruiting of candidates tends to be relational. Who do you know? Who's been in the pipeline for a while? Who's trusted? And that's great as far as it goes. But there are 500,000 elected offices across the country, and up to 75% of them have no Democrat running because that relational approach isn't filling the chessboard in all of these rural areas. So what we're doing is going to the voter file, going to the membership list of all these organizations and saying, hey, basically anybody with a decent head on their shoulders with reasonable values is going to be a mile better than your right-wing Republican ideologue incumbent. So we're just reaching everywhere. And you're covering a lot of the ground that's otherwise uncovered.
Yeah, Peter, also, what's interesting is you're talking about unseating Republican incumbents or filling seats in places that are like where there's a lot of active conservative voters, places where the red state politics, so to speak, is rather safe or it's reliably red. And so are you the candidates that you support or the candidates that you're trying to promote, are they running on progressive platforms? How are they going to maneuver and operate? What sorts of agenda platforms or ideas are they going to push in relatively conservative, reliably red spaces like that?
Well, the key thing here is, and it's become more and more obvious, if there's any silver lining to the terrible situation we're in today, the silver lining is that now everybody can see just how, frankly, evil the Republicans are. And anybody, in 99% of the cases, anybody is better than a Republican in these offices. So, basically, if you're a reasonable person, if you want to make sure that there's equal access to the law, you want to make sure that, cops aren't beating on people, if you want to make sure that, we have a responsible approach to managing coronavirus, anything at all is going to be better than a Republican whose loyalty is essentially to Vladimir Putin.
This kind of sounds like I was just watching this film last week. I caught a glimpse of it. It just came out. Steve Carell was Irresistible. So he goes. I don't know if you heard about this film. It just came out, and so he's a ranking political strategist at the DNC. Notices this video of this former Marine who gives this speech before a town hall, and in some obscure hidden town in Wisconsin, in rural Wisconsin, and then he suddenly runs for mayor, and this becomes like this massive battleground between Democrats and Republicans. Do we feel like those voters are convertible? Because that's what kind of that whole story partly was based around. I mean, it ended up becoming a cautionary tale on campaign finance reform. But do we feel like these voters are really those like Trump voters in 2016? They're convertible enough where they'll come around and go with Democrats? And because a lot of what happened in 2016 was like a lot of white voters being, anti-Obama and frankly and honestly anti-black. I thought that was the undercurrent very prominent in that 2016 election. Do you feel like that this won't be the case as you're heading into 2020 and you're trying to contest all these races in these kinds of places?
So the answer to your question, can we get these voters? The answer is yes to many of them. Some of them are we're never going to get, right? Some of them are dyed-in-the-wool racists, and they're never and they want to see white supremacy, and that's terrible. And we're never going to reach those folks, right? But there are also a substantial block of Obama-Trump voters who went with Obama and then went to Trump. We can definitely reach those folks. The other thing we can show directly from the results of our own program of Contest Every Race itself, we only recruit candidates in these rural places where no Democrat would run otherwise, where the relational model of recruiting has not worked yet, where there's only Republicans running. We only focus there. So those are races where presumably there's plenty of Republican voters. And yet, in Pennsylvania, of the 250 candidates we recruited, 150 of them won. So right there, that proves that, yes, there are voters that we can reach. And it helps further up the ticket, too, because when voters come out to vote for their friend who's, surprising everyone by running for town council, that Democratic vote carries up the ticket, too. It helps with the votes to get Democrats going to Harrisburg. It helps send Democrats to Congress and the Senate and the White House.
How much are you working with candidates of color? Talk a little bit or expound on that. Black candidates, brown candidates.
Absolutely.
Particularly, how do you make them more appealing and attractive to those kinds of voters we just talked about?
Well, we don't have to make them more appealing. People are already appealing. But a lot of our candidates are, 32% of our recruited candidates are African American. 49% of our recruited candidates are women. So we are overrepresented on African American candidates, and that's a great thing because, African American leadership runs so progressive and so courageous.
And also the other thing I'm real curious about too, because we're noticing, internal fights within the Democratic Party. We saw a long time incumbent, for example, getting unseated in Missouri. So how do you navigate all of that, Peter? You're trying to go against Republicans, but you've also got like this rising progressive class of candidates who are trying to make all these changes and disruptions within the Democratic Party at the same time.
So that's honestly something that Contest Every Race doesn't really get involved in. I have my personal view on it. I'll go out on a limb and guess it's the same as yours. We can talk about it if you want, but that's not what Contest Every Race is about. We are about frontline recruitment to make sure that there are fewer Republicans in positions of power and more Democrats, more progressives, more people of color, more women.
We've been talking with Peter Schumer, who is Peter Sherman, who is the Vice President of Programs for Contest Every Race. Go to contesteveryrace.com. Check out what they're doing and also the methodology that's used. Can you explain that real quick while we got a couple more minutes here, Peter, this methodology that you use, the research that you're relying on that helps you identify these races or why these races could be impactful, or you use like this randomized controlled trial. You get a little bit into this on your website. Can you kind of break that down real quick and a little bit more simply for our listeners?
Sure. I'll try to cover. There's a few points there. I'll try to cover them quickly. First thing we do is we have an army of volunteers that spend their days calling up, town clerks and finding out who are the incumbents in these offices, because there's usually no statewide database of this information, and we have to assemble it ourselves. So we have an army of volunteers finding out who are the incumbents. We get the incumbents' names. We look up, are they a Republican or a Democrat? Okay, they're a Democrat. We leave them alone. They're a Republican. Okay, we have some work to do. We assemble a list of like 7,000 races across Pennsylvania, for example. where we need to do some recruiting. Then we send text messages. Then we have a list of offices, and we'll have there'll maybe be something like 100,000 potential Democrats or 200,000, somewhere in that range, potential Democrats we could reach out to in those particular localities. Then, to be able to measure our results, we will set up a randomized control trial, which is the same method that pharmaceutical companies use and scientific research uses to demonstrate the effectiveness of a treatment against coronavirus, for example. They will give some people the treatment, and they'll give some people the placebo, a non-intervention, but otherwise it looks the same. So what we'll do is we'll randomly take, maybe half of or 20% of the people we would otherwise send text to and not send them text all across those same places. All the people we do send text, it's what I talked about earlier. Hey, would you be interested in running for school board? Here's what you need to know. Here's a meeting with your county Democratic Party chair. Here are the forms you need. Here's the filing fees. Here are the steps, et cetera, et cetera. Make it super easy. And then
you make it real super easy and accessible. Yeah.
Totally. And then we measure who did from the groups we contacted and who did from the group we didn't contact, measure them against each other, and we can say, oh, look at that. We boosted recruitment by 30% over what it would have been otherwise.
Peter, Peter, I got to let you go. This has been fascinating. So we got to keep track of what you guys are up to and what your success rate's like, especially this year. We've been talking with Peter Sherman, Vice President of Programs for Contest Every Race. Go to contesteveryrace.com for more there.
Thank you, Charles. Have a good morning,
Thank you, Peter. You too. Take care. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Brothers and sisters, we've seen enough. It's time to get together. We can do big things together, just like they did. President Obama and Vice President Biden passed healthcare reform, helped rescue the auto industry, and created more than 15 million jobs. And right now, together, we can help Joe Biden do it again as president, to unify this country and fix the issues that we're facing right now. Real police reform, expanding access to high-quality education, protecting our right to vote, and rebuilding the economy so that it works for us. Now is the time for us to rise up and do this together with Joe Biden. Go to joebiden.com/Black America to learn more.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for President.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com. Support independent Black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me go to Willie out of Winfield calling for a reality check. Willie.
Yes, Charles, thank you for taking my call, and hello and good morning to WURD family. You asked a question, I think it was a very important question, an essential question about what we would like to see from the Black Lawyers and from the Black Doctors Association. So I put together a list of that would I think, call for a national summit of black organizations, and just briefly listen to my list: Urban Coalition, NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, Black Colleges and Universities, Concerned Congressional Black Caucus, NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists, Black Chamber of Commerce, the Obama Foundation, Black radio stations, Black Lives Matter, Black unions or unions that have top black leadership, the King Center, the Divine Nine, which are fraternities and sororities, the NBA, the WNBA, Black entertainers. I think if we had a national summit that focused on our issues, and we presented them to Vice President Biden and told him that these are the issues that are confronting the African American community and the Latino community, and that we want a serious response. We want a written response. We want commercials focusing on our issues and our concerns. I think it would go a long way. And I think those issues are housing, education, police reform, of course, mental health counseling and treatment, substance abuse counseling and treatment. If we had the national summit like they did back, I think it was in '74.
It was '72, yeah, in Gary,
72,
Indiana.
right?
Yeah, the Black Political Agenda
I think
Summit.
if we had that kind of national summit with the black lawyers and the black doctors, and they all got together in a room, and they said, "Look, we're going to hash out 10,
and it has
15."
And to your point too, well, it has to be independent. Like it can't be. I suspect like the Congressional Black Caucus might counter and say, well, we do that every year with like the annual legislative conference. Well, yes and no, because at the end of the day, a lot of that's corporate sponsored. So if you're going to do something like that, like what you're proposing, or reenacting, which some people call themselves trying to do that. There's been different iterations of that throughout the years, but that was a big significant moment in 1972. It has to be completely independent. Like it's got to be completely black owned. It can't be underwritten by or supported by dollars from major corporations and major white-led institutions. It has to be something that's completely has its own agency.
Well, I understand what you're saying. The National Congressional Black Caucus does get major dollars from white corporations, and they do dictate. As I pointed out on this show earlier, I was listening to the PBS, and they said that the sugar industry underwrites a major portion of the King and the King Center's budget, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and they won't allow the King Center to talk about sugar and the effects of obesity on African Americans. But I think at this crucial time, national summit advocacy on the part of these organizations, on the part of these leaders to come together and focus on our issues at a time when our nation is facing a national pandemic, economic insecurity, and food deserts. I think that this time we could find some corporations that would fund our national summit in the interest that we would provide them with some type of advertising, because without advertising, you can't have that kind of coordination.
Yeah, no, you can't. You can't.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, no, it's we need to head in that direction, and maybe there's an appetite for something like that, kind of on a micro level to try to start a model in a place like Philadelphia, and then you can kind of replicate that and go national. But I like where Willie is headed on that. Let me go to Maurice out of North Philly, who's calling in for a reality check as well. Maurice.
Yes. Good morning, Charles.
Hey, good morning. What's happening?
To piggyback off of what he said, you can have that if you understand equitable solutions, the equitable movement. You can have that without the corporation. And that's why I'm glad the guest you had on this morning, I wish he would have went back into defining equitable solutions and equitable movement. Because it wasn't, I understand it, but it wasn't clear for the listeners. Because the question you were saying, and the question you was asked, first I'd like to say this. Anytime you find economics, it's not around policy. In 1940, when Dr. Leon Sullivan did his thing, it wasn't about no policy. It's about equitable movement. So the question I'd like to ask you,
I would argue, though, Maurice, it's always about policy. The policy supports you're going to have to get but hold on a second, real quick. But you got that. That's just the way it works. That's the way economics, whether it's white economics or black economics or just economics in general, that has to be regulated by, that has to be supported by public policy. And remember, we have to make a distinction here between politics and public policy. Public policy is the formation of the laws, the rules, the regulations. You can't just have libertarian economics like run roughshod over everything and run rampant. There have to be laws, there have to be rules, there have to be, policy put in place, public policy put in place to regulate that kind of economic activity, even when you're trying to grow things. So policy is just very, very key to that. Economics supports, obviously economics, you're right, economics at the center of everything. You know that those transactions between human beings and institutions and businesses and the flow of goods and services and the growth of capital, this supports and sustains that civic society that also has politics. Win elections, then you create policy. It's just an endless circle of life. We can't, one is not done without the other. That's just basic fundamentals. That's all I want to say. I don't think we should go. I mean, I understand people are having a moment right now where they are feeling disenchanted about politics, but at the end of the day, policy is separate from politics. People have to understand that. And that's what the brother was saying, Senator Parker was saying a while ago. If you're on that activist level, or even if you're on that economics level, you need to partner up with the folks who are specializing in crafting or drafting laws and policy to get you to where, to help you imagine or help you to visualize, to actually manifest what you were imagining or trying to create. That's key. You can't have that. Then if you don't have policy, you don't have any of this. You're not going to have economics. Economics is a policy.
Charles, that's false, Charles. That's false.
How's that false? That's just basic human civilization. Maurice, that's basic human history. That's just the dawn of time.
Let's look at the history.
Economics itself is a public policy.
Charles,
you're going to have to go back to the classroom on this. I'm sorry, Brett, but go ahead.
I understand what the senator was explaining. I understand when I have a community partnership. I totally understand what he's saying. You have to look at the different movements that was going on in the country and look at the success. Right now, you have 400 college football players. You have 400 football players standing up right now in the Pac-12. That's economic. That's equitable movement. They get 600 more. They're going to change it without policy. They're not going to need a policy change.
They're going to need but that starts with they are going to need a policy change. They are actively demanding a policy change in order to make that permanent, Maurice. You're going to need a policy change. But see, people are like, I mean, people are in their feelings right now, and they're feeling very anti-politician and anti-status quo. I get that. I'm kind of with that too. The people at the top are gonna have to change, but that does not mean that we completely negate the role of policy, of public policy. Public policy is a non-political, non-partisan, non-ideological thing that just exists, and it keeps things running. Those players seeking certain demands or they're going to need a policy change. At some point, if it hasn't already happened, they're going to have to sit down with the lawmakers to chisel that all out, to figure out, okay, how do we make this permanent? How do we make it in such a way, or they're going to have to sit down with some sort of, whether like at those universities, the board of regents or the board of trustees or the leadership of that university, to then chisel, or the governor or it's the state legislators who oversee that educational system, they're going to have to make that permanent. And that's what you do. Okay, then there's public policy. That's
Charles,
what that is.
Charles, are you familiar with Clorette versus Ohio State?
No, I'm not.
Okay, we'll go back and read. Maurice Claret was a player at Ohio State that fought for his freedom. When the college tried to tell him about a policy, he went to court and won his freedom. But they did, they blackballed him when he got to the NFL. The NCAA and the NFL double team and blackball him, but he won his case based on that issue, Charles. See, we got to understand rules of engagement. We think it's one thing and we saying one thing, but it's
that's the legal. The legal system is part of that public policy framework. Legal system is part of that public policy framework. That is part of that public policy framework. So yeah, I mean, you're kind of making my point for me. I mean, it's a different kind of channel.
Totally
yeah, but no, it's not. I mean, it's the same thing. You still got to go through a structured framework, a structured policy framework. The legal system is a part of that. You understand? All those different pieces are all supposed to. You got it. They're all working in tandem. That's just the way it works. I'm just saying, like, you can't negate that. That's why I'm correcting you, because you're going to give people the false impression that, oh, you don't need policy at all. No, you need policy in order to achieve those economic outcomes.
I didn't say that, Charles.
That's what you were saying. You just put it all on economics, and you just
go back to my first question. I asked you. I said, what three policies that was equitable for the black community was the first thing I asked you. I said, what three equitable for the community? What three policies in the history for Black America was equitable? That's the first thing I asked you. What were the three policies?
Yeah.
And then I moved on to why we can move on without the three policies, besides those three policies. When the brothers say putting a movement together, there are equitable moves that you can do to put that kind of movement together without having corporations sanction.
Yeah, without having corporations. No, I mean, yeah. I mean, we're going to have to do that independently. So you and I are on the same page about that. Yeah, you need to do it independently. You can't. I mean, a lot of this stuff we're going to have to do without those institutions and those corporations. But at some point, it's going to reach a permanent policy change. Like, the movement is going to transition into some sort of permanent policy change. I mean, there's things that we have to do. There's things that we have to do, like, ways in which we have to operate within our own communities. I agree, and that's why I always talk about that parallel track. The things we have to do while we're also putting pressure at the same time on the society that we live in, on the institution. We got this two-front war. We got this war internally that we've got to fight so we can become more independent and self-sufficient, and then we got this war against, like, broader systemic racism and white supremacy, and so that takes, like, that's a long-term game, and that takes, like,
why that's a long-term. Why it's a long-term fight, Charles? Because we have yet to figure out what we're fighting. You understand what I'm saying? We have yet to figure out.
I can agree with you on that.
Racism, when you keep saying racism and racist system, instead of saying we are in a competition to succeed. And what happened is, in a race, when you're racing, you're bringing other people in our lane to race with us instead of us racing our own court. That's why we crash.
It's a good point. It's a good point, Maurice. That's a good point. I gotta let you go because I got a break. But I just need to be clear on that, and maybe we'll talk again because I'm sure you call back. But that's why I had to, like, clarify that. But let me go to break. We'll come back on the other side. Thanks, Maurice, for calling in. I appreciate you. I do. I see where you're headed with that. Let me take a break. When we come back on the other side, we have to go to our citizen segment, our weekly citizen segment. We're going to talk about food insecurity and homelessness. We have Stephanie Sina. Stephanie Sina is joining. She was just featured in the Philadelphia Citizen. Coming up next on our weekly citizen segment here on Reality Check WRD. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Legal information, Black history, hip-hop, and much more. It's the Radio Courtroom with attorney Michael Cord every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. right here on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM. Streaming live at wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
The Word Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on Word Radio. Messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese. Exclusive articles and multimedia content and resources. Stay informed informed with the Word Radio newsletter. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, also Word app as well. Joining us shortly, actually joining us right now is Stephanie Senna. Stephanie Senna is the founder, executive director of Shri Hub, where students join the fight against homelessness. She's an anti-poverty fellow and professor of poverty and policy at the Villanova University Charles Widger School of Law. She was profiled just recently, profiled again, checked up on in the Philadelphia Citizen, and one of their more recent features, Roll Up Your Sleeves and Get to Work, and an update on some of her work surrounding food insecurity, homelessness, and other in the trenches grassroots advocacy work. She joins us here on Reality Check. Stephanie, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right. No, thanks so much for joining us. We're coming back. We talked to you a while back. I think we had you on another Citizen segment when they had featured you, when they showcased you. So really appreciate this. What's been happening that's been different? Obviously, we're in a pandemic, but how's your organization, your efforts been doing since the last time we spoke? And now, since we're going through this pandemic, how have you had to recalibrate and modify things since then?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that COVID has both exposed and exacerbated our problem of homelessness, our housing crisis that we're having in Philadelphia, and the crisis we're having with food insecurity. So we've recalibrated in a number of ways. One of the ways that was mentioned in that Citizen article you're referencing is that we got a grant opportunity with USDA partnership at Lancaster Farm Fresh. And so every single Friday since May 15th, Lancaster Farm Fresh delivers between 300 and 400 boxes of fresh fruits and vegetables straight to my door. And I have a large network of volunteers who come pick up the boxes. They just pull up to the house, pop their trunks. I give them 5 to 10 boxes, 5 to 10 addresses, and they take the boxes all throughout the city. And basically this system we created, I think, is one of the most efficient systems to get people who are in need food directly to their door. We had a problem in Philadelphia and throughout the country. When people are food insecure, they usually have to go to a food bank to access food. And we feel like in COVID, that is not that's not safe, right? You have people who, first of all, often don't have access to public transportation, and they have to then, get in public transportation where they're exposed potentially to COVID, and then stand in a long line with other people who potentially are exposed to COVID. So it's a health risk. But there's also a lot of shame in that, and there's a cost of time and money to be able to get to those food pantries. So
that's right.
We reached out to city council members throughout the city to ask if they knew of constituents who were experiencing food insecurity and who would need these boxes. And we reached out to service providers, social workers, case managers, and put together a list of about 400 addresses, and so every single week we are delivering fresh fruit and vegetables, and the amount of food is about one box can feed about a family of 4 for a week. So that's something that we're doing.
I love that concept. I love that model. Like, for example, I pay for this service, or my household pays for this service, where like we get a box of vegetables and fruits, locally sourced, locally grown, organic. And we get it like a delivery every couple of weeks, like this is box, and we use that. We use those fruits and vegetables. We cook. My wife and I will be in the kitchen, and we'll be cooking, and it works. It's like this community supported agriculture, or CSA, like farm box or locally grown box model. A lot of people will be on. We're on a subscription. It's like, I think we're paying like $50, $60 for every couple of weeks. We get this massive delivery. And we just go with the flow of that company, of that farm, or that locally grown farm company. I would love to see this scaled up, like on a much more massive scale. I love what you're doing here, because I mean, you pick 400 families. I mean, where are you getting the resources or the money from to pay for something like this? Are there plans? Are there visions to really scale this up, to really enhance it, enlargen it in a big way? I mean, one, you could be donating, but also you could maybe be creating a big CSA food box model that some people subscribe to, if they have the means to do so, to support those efforts for the food that's donated.
Absolutely, and we are planning to scale up. Money is coming from the USDA, and actually we don't receive any of that money at all. That money goes to Lancaster Farm Fresh to produce the food, and Lancaster Farm Fresh is a co-op and provides for the CSA shares, just as you're explaining. So that's their model. And then what happened is that Lancaster Farm Fresh didn't have the connections in Philadelphia to get the boxes to people who were food insecure. So we are just the distributor, and we're not paid for it. This is all volunteer work. But, I personally have been affected by food insecurity. As you mentioned when you were introducing me, I am now the Anti-Poverty Fellow and a full-time law faculty at Villanova teaching poverty and policy. But that is a new position. I was hired, I was officially hired 2 months ago, and my position started on July 31st officially. But for 17 years, I was an adjunct professor at Villanova, making nothing. And about 30% of all adjunct professors throughout the country are experiencing food and housing insecurity, and I was one of them. So when we went in quarantine in March, I was having trouble feeding my family, and so I was a recipient of a USDA sponsored box. But that box came from like a major corporate farm, and it had a can of beef and a bag of potato flakes. And it was so disappointing. First of all, I'm a vegetarian, and I wouldn't know what to do with a can of beef. It's like a can of tuna, but it's beef.
Yeah.
And the potato flakes were barely, edible. And so I think that there was a shift in the USDA at some point between then and now, where they're starting to give these grants to more local farmers. So I think that's great. And now we're also starting to increase capacity, get even more boxes. The grant has continued to be re-upped. And now we have offers to, it was dropped off at my house, but now we're having offers from local stores saying that we can use their store to operate out of. So there are plans to scale up, and there's a massive need. This is just a Band-Aid. I think that it's not addressing the root causes that we have of poverty, but right now during a pandemic, I have heard from people who said like they were able to pay their rent because of these boxes, that they didn't have to use that money on food. And it's terrible that in Philadelphia people are having to choose between rent and food, two basic necessities. But that's what we have right now. And so if we can help alleviate some of that stress in a time of emergency, that's what we're trying to do. That's one of the ways we've kind of recalibrated. And to your point, we are scaling up as we speak.
We're talking with Stephanie Senna. Senna, do I have to pronounce correctly, Senna?
You do. Good job. Yeah.
All right. Stephanie Senna, she is founder, executive director of the Student-Run Emergency Housing Unit of Philadelphia, SHREHUP. So go to SREHUP.org to learn more about what they're doing, how you can get involved, how you can volunteer. I'm sure there are opportunities for people to volunteer, right, Stephanie? Even amid pandemic. Right, exactly. To help. Explain that to us. Like, if someone wanted to get involved with, because I think it's an amazing effort. I would love to see it scaled up, and I'd like to kind of keep in touch and see how that goes. Because we've been having conversations. We've been having conversations during our onWURD segments on this program about how to, for example, how to scale up farming, how to force people to become more food sovereign. I'm sure you've heard that term before. As they're trying to get out of food insecurity. Okay, well, how do we become food sovereign? Identifying those sources of food sovereignty in Philly or around Philly or connected to Philly that can start. Because I hear where you're coming from on that. I mean, one, it's an incredibly taxing experience and a waste of time and resources sometimes for folks to have to go to a food bank, right, or to go to some place where they're getting free food, and then two, there's a stigma attached around. It shouldn't be a stigma attached around it. You know, everyone is. We're all supposed to be, you know, aware that we're going through a hard time. We're all going through a struggle. So the last thing you should have to worry about is people looking down on you because you go to a food bank. But here we are. You know, it's just like we still can't get over those kinds of stigmas that were there pre-pandemic. So here you just have this box that's just delivered to you, and you know, it eliminates a lot of that stress and stressor. If someone wants to become like a volunteer, if someone wants to become involved with Sri Hub, what are some of the ways that they can volunteer? What are some of the roles that you have for people who want to get involved with an organization like this?
Absolutely. So we have so many ways that people can volunteer, and we always say this is all hands on deck. We are on social media, also at facebook.com/SriHub, or people can find me on social media. We're also on Instagram, and we offer regular updates, newsletters, but also volunteer opportunities. And so we could have volunteers who help distribute the boxes or help drive the boxes to people in need, or even help. One way that I want to scale up is that there are so many black and brown farmers in Philadelphia and around the area. And Lancaster Farm Fresh is an amazing co-op, but I would love to see some of these farmers in Philadelphia be sponsored, get the money from the grants, and use it not just to feed people who are in need, but also, you know, empower local farmers here in Philadelphia. That's another way that I want to use, you know, the resources we have is to try to get that USDA funding into the hands of the farmers in Philadelphia who are doing amazing work already and have been. So I think that there's.
I agree with you there. We were just had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about this stuff. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll let you finish about that because it's just you know, it's just kind of fascinating what you're doing here. It's exciting, and we seem to be on the same wavelength or the mind length about that, because we were just having a conversation about that a couple of weeks ago about like we got all these like urban farmers, as they're called, a lot of black farmers within the city of Philadelphia. And we were just trying to figure out, like, how do we scale this up? Like, how do we get, like, I mean, I get this box, but I mean, I subscribe to it, I pay for it, but we've got all this rising food insecurity that's happening right now. Like, how do we get this type of food? How do we get it straight from farm to table? How do we create an infrastructure for that? So it sounds like you're kind of on that path or going in that same direction. I'm sorry, Stephanie, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
go ahead.
That's okay. And yeah, I'm thinking of those same things. And so I think that would require like a team of grant writers, because Lancaster Farm Fresh, they are a farm. It's a co-op, volunteer, you know, operation. But they had grant writers who went after this grant, right? And so if we could build a team of people who solicit the USDA for that money, I think that, you know, the USDA, like I said, they shifted from the beginning of the pandemic till now. Originally, those boxes were filled with really, you know, junk from corporate farmers, huge corporate farmers, right? So that shifted to sponsoring instead of these corporate farmers with this junk, like really good local farmers with fresh produce. But I think that we could do even better by sponsoring, you know, Lancaster Farm Fresh reached out to me because they didn't have the connections to the city. So what I envision is that these grants go to the farmers in the city. So you're not just empowered, you know, I mean, because some of those farmers are the same ones who are experiencing housing and food insecurity. So you do both. You empower, you finance, you support, you sponsor these local Philadelphia farmers in a community that is already, you know, a quarter of our population is below the poverty line. So I want, you know, ideally that grant money to go to Philadelphia farmers where the poverty is condensed. Right. So that would require, like, absolutely, I would love more grant writers to help with that, to make the partnerships and the connections. And I'm sure it's already happening on the ground. So I don't want to suggest that there aren't amazing people who are already working on this. But, you know, just to draw attention to it and kind of come together and use all our resources. Because, again, like, I think that one thing I often tell my students that what we need to do is think constellationally and connect the dots between systems of oppression and systems of poverty. Right, and so, you know, when we're thinking about food insecurity, we're also thinking about, you know, who has access to grants, who has access to funding and to the money. And as much as possible, we don't want to just get the food distributed to these communities, but also the grant money as well. So
that's right.
Farmers. So that's what I'm thinking. But I also want to make sure that you know, that we spend time talking about the other part of the project, which is really what most of my
right.
is go to, which is the tiny homes. I imagine that was something else.
You just read my mind. Yeah, you did it again. You read my mind. Yeah, tell me about tiny homes, because I was like, we spending so much time talking about the food insecurity piece and what she's doing with that. But you've got this, you're looking for more ways to scale up on tiny houses. What are tiny houses, and how are you going to go about that?
Sure. So that's something that my organization has been working on for a number of years now, and we have made progress. We've built partnerships. I have visited tiny home villages for people who are experiencing homelessness throughout the country and the world to learn best practices. But as I mentioned when I first came on the show, COVID has both exposed and exacerbated the homelessness crisis we have. And so what that's doing is it's creating renewed momentum across the city, but especially in city council, to do what we need to make this work. So in Philadelphia, tiny houses were not allowed to be used residentially. You weren't allowed to live in a tiny house in Philadelphia. And you're still not. However, there is language that we're working with city councils to adopt to allow for tiny home residential use throughout the city. And while we're waiting for city council to adopt it, which we believe they will adopt it, in the session back, when they're on summer recess, but when they're back, I think that they're going to propose that legislation to adopt the language so that we can have tiny houses in Philadelphia. But in the meantime, we're getting special exemptions so that we can operate a pilot program. And that is because we have all of this excitement in the city with L&I and with city council to move forward. So basically, the tiny houses is one tool in a toolbox to try to eliminate homelessness. It is not the solution to homelessness. It is one of many. And so it is coupled with a variety of different homeless prevention tactics that we're using and like really working hard on. So we have these tiers of the tiny home villages. The pilot project is really considered tier 2. And so what that is, we're getting about an acre of land in the city where we're building these tiny houses. The product is Liberation Tiny Homes. They build on wheels, but we are going to remove the wheels and put them on foundation, because a house on wheels is not considered a tiny house. It's considered an RV and follows under different codes and laws. But anyway, we're getting these houses built. And in the village, we'll also have a community center, animal run space. The houses are meant to be both affordable and accessible. And by that I mean wheelchair accessible, because we have a problem in Philadelphia with wheelchair access. We have a problem that a lot of low-income housing is not pet-friendly, so pet-friendly. And really trying to make Philadelphia more equitable, and we're working towards housing justice. So what we want in the homes are people who are experiencing homelessness and who have been kept out of the housing market before. It's going to be run like a condominium, so everybody's going to have a share of the village. And really, in that system, people who, if they have an income, even if it's SSI or disability. And if you go down to the encampment right now, the encampment's at Ben Franklin Parkway, and I go there regularly, and I know so well the people who are down there. And there are some people down there who would be perfect for this village. I'm thinking of someone named Kimberly who's in a wheelchair with her dog. She collects SSI every month, and she nets about $950 a month. But that's not enough money for her to get housing. In Philadelphia, there are so many obstacles to affordable housing, including the fact that, jobs are scarce. Wages haven't increased since 2009. They're still stuck at minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. And you have, housing prices that have skyrocketed since 2011. PHA waitlist has been closed since 2013. The vouchers have all dried up. So, and then if you have an eviction on your record, God forbid, then it's almost impossible to get into housing. So we're trying to increase the inventory of affordable housing and give people access, and then home ownership. In addition to that, though, we're also working with teams to rehabilitate vacant houses that are in disrepair, because that's also a key component. There are so many vacant houses in Philadelphia. There's more vacant houses than there are people who are homeless, but most of that housing is not livable. So
that's terrible. That's terrible too. When you think about that, when you look at those numbers, like the mismatch there, and how like you could really eradicate, you really got to be eradicating. There should be no such thing as homelessness when you think about all this vacant property, when you think about vacant home property, vacant office property. Then you have like the tiny houses. There's a picture of the tiny house. Like there's a tiny house factory in Lancaster, and you're there, and it's like these are nice homes. They're just small, and we need to redefine how we're thinking of housing, because we're living in like this. I think it all started with like years ago, like in the early 2000s with MTV Cribs, and then everybody's like, oh, I have to have a big house. Like, well, in a lot of situations, you don't need like that big of a house. You just need a house. And so, it kind of like created these sort of false expectations around what is a house, or what a house should be, or what is decent or good living. And that's just created so many, it's brought us to the point where we are now, and then you have so many people homeless. We've been talking with Stephanie, I gotta let you go. I'm so sorry. We gotta actually go to break. Stephanie Senna is Executive Director, Founder of Student Run Emergency Housing Unit of Philadelphia. Go to SREHUP, SREHUP, or srehup.org for more information on that. Check out her latest piece at the Philadelphia Citizen. You can learn more about what she was just talking about, what she's up to. Roll up your sleeves and get to work. That's one of the recent features in the Philadelphia Citizen. Go to philadelphiacitizen.org for more. Stephanie, thanks for your time. Really
Thank
appreciate
you so
the update.
much. This is a
thanks
pleasure.
for your work.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Keep up that work, and we'll check in with you again. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. And also joining us is Heather Hiles for our weekly livelihood segment that's coming up next here on Reality Check with Open Phone Lines here on WURD.
In Pennsylvania, everyone counts, and everyone needs to participate in the census. Our population count determines our voice in government and how much federal funding our communities receive for health care, food assistance, education, transportation, housing, and more. So every infant and child, every foreign and U.S. citizen, everyone matters. For a stronger future, we all need to count. To learn more, go to pa.gov/census.
This is Word Radio, independent black media. Show some love for your favorite neighborhood with Word Radio. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays now through August 20th from 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. Shining a light on Philadelphia's neighborhoods with a focus on neighborhood history, Philadelphia's freedom fighters, and community resources that are helping to shape the city's future. Mondays with the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith, and Thursdays with Andrea Lawful Sanders. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays, 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com, the Word Radio app, and on Word TV via YouTube and Facebook. The Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Wells Fargo and Pico. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065 and then 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900. While we talk to, and if you have questions, you want to join in on the conversation, I'll add some texture and perspective to it. We've got Heather Hiles joining us for our weekly livelihood segment. She joins us by phone here. Heather, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well today, thank you.
All right, that's good.
We made it through the storm, and it's a sunny, beautiful day in D.C.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Right. We all made it through there. So there's going to be a lot of big puddles of water standing here and there. You just got to get through and just making sure people don't drive through those. But
right.
You're absolutely right. Yes, it's good to see some blue skies as the song goes. So I want to get your thoughts on Black women in politics rising. You know, we've got the presidential candidate Joe Biden. You know, he's mulling very deeply over whether or not he's going to pick a Black woman running mate. And then we had, I was a stunning upset last night. I think a lot of people need to pay attention to activists from Ferguson, Missouri activist Cori Bush That's how she started in politics. She unseated a long-time black congressman, Lacey Clay,
Absolutely.
in Missouri and St. Louis. A lot of people watching that. But I've been noticing a lot of disruptions in the black political space, black political leadership itself going through something of a reckoning. And what are the pros and cons of that? I want to get your thoughts on as you're watching some of that activity take place, because it influences and it shapes a lot of what we've been discussing during these livelihood segments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in on that. And I'm a bit of an insider-outsider from the perspectives, I think. In the Bay Area, in San Francisco, I just full disclosure, I worked on the first Clinton Gore campaign in his rapid response team in San Francisco, and I was communications director for Gavin Newsom when he first ran for mayor. He's now our governor of California. I know Kamala Harris very, very well. When I was a school board commissioner, she was supportive of me, and I supported her when she ran for district attorney. You know, I know most of these political figures. I know Karen Bass and her steadfast, good record out of California as well. And I think it's really... from a macro perspective, and as a parent of, you know, young adults, I will say I am so heartened, and I couldn't be more thrilled to see young people claiming their voices and demanding to be heard, and getting out in the streets and doing whatever it takes that is, you know, safe and legal to express their opinions and hold elected officials and other public servants accountable. I think that is the best thing I've seen in a really long time. I was really lamenting, and probably a lot of your listeners as well, with the last presidential election, so many people, so many black people I know stayed home, and so many young black people I know stayed home. And
the numbers are there. I know every time. And when it happened, after it happened, I remember being on panels and saying, hey, you know, a lot of us stayed home, and people were just like giving me all kinds of side eye and like, well, why would you say? I'm like, the numbers. I mean, now people are like, understand. I'm like, it's all of us knew someone, if not ourselves. I know I went to the polls, but who stayed home, who tapped out, or they did some silly, ridiculous stuff like write in somebody else's name, and it's like, it really. I'm not saying that was the only reason that election fell apart. That's not the only reason, but it's one of many factors that contributed to that just devastating, destructive loss that we all experienced, that we're all experiencing now. Back in 2016. I'm sorry, Heather. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly right. And I do have family members, and especially young people, you know, godchildren and others who I know stayed home, and I was like the Grinch around my parts for a while because I was lecturing everybody, you know, vote early if you don't know if you can do it the day of, all that stuff. So my point being is I'm delighted to see the activism, and I also, one of the things I think we've touched on a little bit in the past is I've been very disappointed in many of our elders, obviously not John Lewis, but a lot of our elder black people, political leaders, who have been so hungry, insatiably, I would say, for recognition, for enrichment, for whatever, sense of power, whatever it is, I think a lot of them have failed to bring in and really mentor my generation and this up-and-coming generation of leadership. I think we've had to make our way on our own and with other allies, but not because our own people brought us into the fold and said, this is how far I could go, but you could go much further because of what I've done. And that's what should happen. So honestly, I feel like if younger, more progressive leaders are representing more of the populace, and they're representing action, they're unhappy and dissatisfied with status quo, and we're able to I love seeing the primaries be active and people going and voting and having an opinion, you know, for once, and being willing to, you know, give someone, hey, Corey, give it a shot, see what you can do. You know, a lot of us have, you know, we, you know, have known and appreciate all the work that Lacey Clay and his father did. But, you know, it's sometimes time for new leadership. They have a new way of doing things to come in and give it a shot. And I think it's super healthy is what I'm saying.
Right.
And, you know, it's hard for people, and especially in politics, one of the things that's really so sad to me is it's usually been the person, like the lowest common denominator, the person who's still standing and waiting their turn, you know, year after year or decade after decade, whatever, until they term out or someone else terms out and it's their turn. And not because they earned it, not because they have new ideas, not because they're doing anything, but just because they're there. And I'm tired of those kind of politics. I think we all are tired of political officials who just have no aspirations in life but to see their names on every signpost on every corner. And we just need more people who are more accountable. So I'm like, please vote as often as you can with whatever opportunities you have to have your voice heard. And when we get a new administration in, we've got to hold them accountable. That's where it's really interesting to watch the, you know, progressive platform negotiate with the Biden platform and seeing what's coming out of that. We need to know, like we were talking last time about education and upskilling, and I was saying how black parents need to be really, and grandparents need to be aware of what is being offered or not being offered to their kids who need a great education as a fundamental, as a civil right, as a basic kind of set of, you know, entering into the workforce of the future. And, you know, a lot of us, for example, find charter schools rather than regular public schools to fit the bill. But you got to educate yourself. You got to know, and you can't just take whatever people are serving up to you and call it a day, because people, a lot of political leaders manipulate us, whether they're on the left or the right, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right about that. You know, I was looking at our Facebook Live page, and one of our regular listeners, I don't like this kind of conversation. You know, he's saying, you know, he predicts that large numbers of black people are going to stay home this time and not vote. Black voters are apathetic at this point, especially with the pandemic raging. Black folks in the hood are not going to send in mail-in ballots, especially with the mail servers breaking down in Philly now. I just, you know, I understand, like, we have to identify the challenges, but rather than having a conversation that predicts the worst case scenario, or rather than having a conversation about, like, oh, woe be us, we can't do anything, then the immediate next conversation is, okay, we've identified the challenge. Okay, well, how do we tackle it? How do we become warriors, and how do we, like, navigate through it? Because okay, so we're going to have some issues with mail-in balloting. Okay, well, what are the other options that are on the table? What are other strategies that we come up with? I really don't. I just showed this as an example of kind of like, you know, there is that mood out there. And folks don't realize it's self-defeating. Like it is.
It's the internalizing. For me, it's internalization of racism. It is that we, you know, we just can't do any better. Woe is us, you know. And I don't have space in my mind or my heart for that. When I look at the sacrifices that people like John Lewis made, literally his entire life. Almost the entire life, I guess as a little kid, maybe not, but almost his entire life for our people, for our rights. And I just go, just to say we're just going to phone it in, or we're just not interested, and leave it at that is not acceptable for me personally. And what I think, for example, if you're not comfortable with mail-in ballots, first of all, I think we should expect, and we need to hold our government accountable to have a reasonable postal service. And I think just, you know, the whole system of Trump trying to dismantle the administration, dismantle the federal government, he's being relatively effective, and he's got his guy to do that with the Postal Service. But who works the Postal Service? Let me just ask you that, Charles, because last time I checked, it was a lot of my friends and family who live in my neighborhood here in D.C. who are postal workers, and they work hard, and they work, you know, they're working like 6-7 days a week now.
They know what time it is. They know that this election is just as much about their survival as it is about ours.
Correct. Correct, and they're smart and they're capable and they're committed, and they are going to make sure our ballots are received and processed. So, like, I don't think so little of us. I really think that there's so much more going on. If people aren't comfortable with mail-in ballots, the polls are going to be open in most states like a month before the election day. So you can go in. What we did last time around in the primaries is we went first thing when they opened at like 7 or 8 in the morning and got in, voted, got out. And no muss, no fuss. It was totally fine.
Totally fine. Yeah.
So,
Heather, hold that thought.
Yeah.
Hold that thought, Heather, real quick, because I got Woody out of Winfield wanted to call in, join in on that conversation. Woody?
Yeah, man. How you guys doing? A great conversation, and it's a little sad. I was listening and heard about the issue of voting. I had voting machines in here before this virus started, around in January, in the barbershop, to show some of these young guys, because, as you know, Charles, they took away the straight ticket. You can't go in and vote a straight ticket. A lot of these young men are not good readers, and again, our schools have not. They failed. Let's just put it like that. In many cases, I don't know if you've looked at the SPR report. I think that's what they call it. It's a proficiency report, and some of these. I think it was Brother Shamari did a show, which was a great program, and he brought it on that they're doing zero. How can you do lower than zero in your proficiency as it relates to reading? So there's no if, and, or but about it. You can't vote if you can't read. So when you took away the straight ticket, a lot of people would go in that couldn't read, and at least I voted. They knew they voted Democrat, and then they came out, but they did something. So we have to put more, to me, direction in the mindset of how are we going to train people. And I use my shop with these machines. I had the machines in here to actually try to show them. And it was a little difficult from the old way that the machines ran. The new machines were more difficult for them to understand, to be able to vote. So I just want to put that little bug in your ear as a project to get this reading issue. We could kill two birds with one stone. Start learning that we can show them how to vote, but you can't vote if you can't read.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and Heather, you make a good point, because in Philly, a quarter of the adult population is illiterate on some level.
Oh my goodness.
A quarter. That was the last data point. It's a lot of. So I this is just ongoing conversation about exactly what is the Philadelphia school system doing, because I've seen like the performance, the reading proficiency performance of Philadelphia public school students. For the life of me, I don't understand why that's not made out of a big issue. Why people don't make a big hay out of it in Philly, but it is. That's where things are right now. But go ahead, Heather.
That's it. Yeah, that's a great point. And it reminded me of this brother, and I wish I could think of the program right now. There is a brother who is based out of New York who literally takes different levels of reading books, like, for as early as you start to read till probably like, I don't know, for early preteens or something like that. He takes the books to the barber shop, and he has a little library of books for boys to check out when they're at the barber shop getting their haircuts with their dads. So I was going to just suggest to the guy who called in, to Woody, that he might check that out as his way of taking on reading as a fundamental issue for us, because unfortunately it is true. There are a lot of people who are illiterate and who are also getting pushed into special education courses and classes, and just not even having to have standards around basic, staying at grade level kinds of outcomes. It is really a shame.
It is.
Yeah, we've got to. I say no excuses. I mean, if you can't read or you can't make it through a ballot, then you should absolutely have a ballot mailed to you at home, and then have somebody that you trust to talk you through it and walk you through it and go through it with you. But we've got to help each other, and we know how to, have a van and get loaded up and get people over to the polls. And if that doesn't work this time, we know how to do it other ways to escort people or make sure that they get an absentee ballot sent in the mail to them.
Exactly.
We can do better than this, and I just think no excuses. Yeah.
we can't give up. You got to keep that. We can absolutely do better than this. We should and we will. And so we have to just figure that all out. We really do.
And black people don't like being told we can't do anything. So
right.
I
don't know.
There's a little bit of reverse psychology. I think Trump saying how we can't do mail-in ballots is going to piss some black people off, and we're going to go and vote just to make a point. That's what I'm hoping happens.
I saw that back in 2012. I remember having this exact same conversation with a stunned Republican strategist the day after the election in 2012 because they thought voter ID was going to work. It pissed a lot of black folks off. Like, that's what I want to see in 2020.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, they were like, oh, you going to voter ID me? Oh, I mean,
you want to take my right to vote away? Okay, well, then I definitely need to vote. LeBron James paying for people.
Exactly.
I don't know if it's in Florida or where, for ex-felons, you have to pay back whatever money you owe back in order to be re-enfranchised. And so he's got a pool of money just to pay off whatever that's called, whatever you owe.
That poll tax. Right.
Right.
Yeah, I love that work. I love what LeBron's doing. That's
cool.
That's the step up
I was
moment.
like, that works. Yeah.
That works for me. Right. Heather Hiles, always a pleasure. We got to let you go because we came to break, but we'll be talking with you next week. And definitely looking forward to that conversation next Wednesday at the same time with Heather Hiles for our livelihood segment. She's our livelihood contributor here on Reality Check WRD. Heather, as always, it's a pleasure. We'll talk soon.
Likewise. Take care.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye. Let's take a break. And when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. Have an old working fridge or freezer in your garage or basement? Pico will pick it up, dispose of it responsibly, and give you a $75 rebate. That's right, $75. Plus, you can save as much as $150 a year on your energy bill by getting rid of it. Just schedule your pickup at pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE today. Be sure your fridge or freezer is plugged in and working at time of pickup.
Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media.
Hey, Word family. Our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorosos.com for details.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Calvin out of Delaware, who's calling in for a Reality Check. Calvin?
Charles, how you doing?
Hey, what's happening?
Earlier, you were talking about, the job banks. Because I'm down here in Delaware, and I know I go to the job bank, and I see cars Cadillacs and Audis in line, getting food. So, saying earlier in Safari, I don't think there's a stigma. I mean, not today. We're considering what's going on, what have you.
Right.
I was listening to a conversation this past Saturday on Dr. Paul's show. He has herbs and the vitamins, and brother had called in, and he was saying how up in Philly, the issue with the trash and what have you, on the sidewalk, there would be piles of food that people just threw away. Things they may have gotten at a job bank, and they just threw them away. So he was saying that, I got to thinking, because the brother was saying some young people that don't know how to cook. You just wasted all of this food, you know, and you may just go to run to McDonald's or Burger King, but there's piles of food on the side of the road, you know, for trash. You're throwing out for trash, and food that may be edible, and you just may not know how to cook it.
Yeah.
You know, so I just really thought that was really like, like basics, you know, like, but you know, some young people, they may not have that, you know, they may not have that, well, certainly not, you know, not information about it, you know, what have you, but.
Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of waste going on. That was one of those questions that I started to think about, but we got to the end of our last conversation with Stephanie Senna earlier on with her, like, you know, trying to figure out ways to, because there's a lot of food waste, even in this pandemic and food insecurity. There's a whole, like, I don't know if you were listening to Calvin, like this was about months ago. We had someone on during our weekly Citizens segment. They were at the time, they might still be the manager of, I think it's the Rittenhouse Apartments or the Rittenhouse Hotel. No, is the Ritz-Carlton or Rittenhouse? Right, but the long and short of it, there's a restaurant in there, and she was just fuming with rage when she found out the cooks in her kitchen had dumped out like a whole trash can's worth of baked muffins, of baked rolls. And so it prompted an idea, and she created an organization where she collects wasted food from restaurants all over the Philly area. Well, that's the kind of stuff that we need. We need people to start thinking, you know, like the actual problem, in the problem you'll find the solution. Right. And we're not doing enough of that. We're not doing enough of that, whether it's Philly or whether it's elsewhere. Like that's why I'm talking about. People are going to have to like think more creatively, and we're going to have to think more independently too. And we got to stop thinking. Black folks especially are going to have to snap out of this. There's a lot of us doing this, thinking that these problems can't be solved. That it's like it's just like it's the end of the world. Like you cut that out. Like because our parents, our grandparents, and I remember them their stories, and the folks living before them, they went through like the ringer 10 times as hard as we did, but they got through it. You know what I'm saying? And they got through it with less. Like people got cut. Like this brother up on Facebook talking about, I predict, you know, hey, a whole bunch of us ain't going to use mail-in ballot or whatever. Like stop predicting and come up with a strategy to avoid that. You know, like people are like, you know, and social media feeds into this. This is one of the reasons. I'll be honest with you. I hate social media. I hate it with a passion. I don't like using it. I do it because it's become a necessity in the kind of space and profession that I'm in. But it like feeds into that self-defeating mentality. Folks, snap the hell out of it. Like it's like, one, it's annoying and frustrating, and two, it's leading you nowhere but to hell. You are just that kind of attitude and that kind of mindset where you can't figure things out, where you can't figure out how to do it on your own without waiting for somebody or waiting for like white folks to do it for you, waiting for white folks to take the first step. It's a road straight to hell, like straight up. I mean, it's the road to perdition. It really is. And so cut it out. I'm sorry, Calvin. Go ahead. I didn't mean to go on like that.
No, I was just saying it's toxic. It's like a defeatist attitude. Toxic. You know, so I hate it. Yeah. With that stuff, you certainly want to rise above it. But I know, like you're saying, you know, social media, it is informational. You know, I mean, it is like a link in so far as communicating, what have you, family and all that. So, you know, it is important. You know, but I just wanted to just say those things.
No, I appreciate that. You know, Calvin. You know, people walking around Philly like, you know. Like, oh, you know, all these broken down houses and everything. Okay, well, you know, fix them, like, or build some houses, or like, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's just like we have all these different efforts and things going, and I know people, like, I understand, like, people don't have a lot of means. There are a lot of people out there who don't have a lot of means. There are a lot of people out there who don't have a lot of money, but there are ways to get things done. There are like ways to, you know, we're losing our imagination here. Like, you know, people sitting up on Instagram or watching Netflix all day. It's like, you need to be sitting up there thinking of a strategy, a way to get out of this funk that we're in. You know what I'm saying? Instead of sitting up on Facebook all day, like spreading death and destruction and like making grim statements like that. That's all y'all doing. Just sitting up on Facebook, sitting up on Twitter all day, talking about nothing but, you know, just engaging in circular firing squads and just talking about nothing but about like how things aren't working. We'll come up with an idea for how it can work, Like, seriously. Like, y'all need to snap out of it. Like, folks need to snap out of it. Get to work. Roll your sleeves up. You hear the girl like she got it going. The white girl, Stephanie Senna, she getting to work. She's like, yo, I'm going to find a grant, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Trump administration Agriculture Department at that. I'm going to reach out to this nonprofit, organic, cooperative farm thing, Lancaster Farm Fresh, and identify 400 people in Philly that are food insecure, hungry. And she delivering boxes to them every Friday morning at 10 a.m. She's been doing this since May 15th. She knows what it's like because she was hungry with 2 kids herself. She actually is one of the people getting the box delivery. You see, figuring it out. She ain't sitting up on Facebook, sitting up on Twitter and Instagram, all day complaining about stuff. She getting the work done. Like, that's what we need to do. We need to come up with the ideas, like radio stations like this, like WURD, and programs like Reality Check. We're here to provide you with a voice and provide you with a canvas, to have conversations about how do we fix this, not about how to lament it even more. Like, seriously, like, y'all need to wake up. Y'all really need to wake up. Y'all sleeping. Y'all up on here being like prognosticating and acting cute and acting like you smart. And you saying all these profound things on Facebook, and y'all ain't doing nothing. Y'all ain't doing the work. Let me go to Derek out of North Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Derek, what's good?
Love, peace, blessing, and prosperity, Charles.
Hey, peace. How you doing, sir? Yeah, really, peace. I mean that with all sincerity, Derek. I need some peace right now. I do.
Oh,
but thank you for that. Thank you for that, brother. All right.
Yes, sir.
Because we need it. We need the peace. We do.
You're welcome, Charles. You're so welcome. That's why I put it out there, because I mean it from my heart, too. But yeah, I wanted to comment on, piggyback a little bit on social media. I have a understanding of mine. Social media, to me, is like a tool. In the wrong hands, it becomes a dangerous weapon. The other thing I wanted to speak on, Charles, is that the conversation you had with Maurice about what can we do, and you mentioned where the necessity of policy, and I agree 100% with you, and I agree with the passion of Maurice, but I didn't appreciate the criticism, because you can have a thought or an action, but once it becomes past those things, to get outside of yourself or the group that you're with, you got to come into another group with policies and topics of agendas. So the point of the matter is that we don't want to omit one iota of what it would take for us to unify ourselves with one agenda. So policies are necessary, and impact of action is necessary. Right. So we need to be at the table together.
Yeah, we do. No, you're absolutely right, because that too much of that conversation becomes toxic and not constructive at all. And so we have to, you're right, we got to do it all in one space. We need to start figuring that out, and we need to be more intentional about it. You're absolutely right. Yeah, what are your, Derek, and while I'm talking to you, what in your mind, like, what are those like 2 or 3 things for you that kind of come like at top of mind that have to work, or that could work? Like, I don't know if that is something that's on your canvas right now.
Well, what stays on my canvas is love, peace, blessings, and prosperity. If we get that incorporated, because most of the policy makers and most of the people who are in high stations on church, they go to Sunday. So if we can appeal to their moral compass and some common sense, and with some good legislation, and I, Charles, we really need to hold people who are in, especially recently losing the great man John Lewis. He gave us our orders, and it's as simple as that. And unless they have fallen on deaf ears, there's no excuse. We need everybody at the table.
Yeah, we do. We need everyone at the table, and we can't constantly get into this habit of like dismissing one another, just because we're in different lanes. We have to appreciate the different lanes and the different styles, and because we all want the same outcome. We're all trying to get into the same reach the same goal. We all got the same mission in mind. And so, you know, like we need to so appreciate what the entrepreneurs or the business folks are doing. But, you know, business folks need to appreciate what the politicians are doing. And the politicians need to appreciate what the activists are doing. And the activists and the politicians need to appreciate what the urban farmers are doing. Like, okay, well, what's the mission and how do we all get there? How do we all get to that one big, that one big outcome, that one big positive outcome? And so it's going to require all of us to sit at the table, to get out of that toxic mindset and understand that that we all complement each other in a number of ways. That what we're doing, we should appreciate that. So we're not going to agree all the time. We're going to disagree, but at least, you know, we're all kind of, you know, fellow warriors in the struggle, and so we should just keep it at that. So no, Derek, thanks so much. Peace and love back at you. Okay, I'm going to wrap this Wednesday. I'm a little bit better. Thank you, Derek. I'm going to wrap this Wednesday midday edition of Reality Check. We're heading into the source. That's going to be hosted by the Black Women's Leadership Council. That's coming up next here on WURD. I want to thank everybody for chiming in, folks on Facebook Live, and also folks who called in as well, our local subject matter experts, our word listening audience, and all the guests as well. Troy Wilmore as well. I want to thank him for his patience. He's always getting it done. The board is still, so I appreciate him as well. You can go to twitter.com @EllisonReport, thebnote.com, thebenote.com for more there. We've also got another Council of State Governments, Council and Communities of Color micro summit I'll be hosting coming up this Friday at 10 a.m. So more information will be posted very shortly at the BE Note, and you can get registered as well. We're going to be talking about Black business. Black business, got a great panel lined up for you there. All right, Philly and beyond. In the meantime, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart, and more importantly, stay safe out there. And I hope to see you tomorrow. I will hear you, or you'll hear me, on Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton. I'll be doing that a little bit later on in the afternoon. And you will hear that on WURD as well a little bit later in the day. All right, everyone, take care. Watch out for those puddles, the standing water. Please be safe out there. And God willing, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.